Okay. I call the meeting to order, the City of University Heights City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, July 10th, 2018. Welcome, everyone. The council is present. All five are present. And Abigail Brown is here from the Left Law Firm. Welcome, Abby. And first order of business is approval of minutes. The June 12th regular council meeting, the June 19th special council meeting, and the June 25th special council meeting.
I'll move to approve.
Are there any additions or corrections on any of these? Hearing none, the minutes are approved by unanimous consent. Okay. Now we'll go to some public input, and I first have Becky signed up to speak from Solarize, Johnson County. Welcome, Becky.
Thank you. I'm Becky Soglin.
Oh,
Can
we'll
you all
have
hear
to
me all
move
right? Sustainability Coordinator for Johnson County. And Councilperson Virginia Miller asked that I might come and share a few words with you about this program. Some of you may have heard about this. It was launched earlier this year with several of the cities. All homeowners throughout Johnson County are eligible to participate, so it's a group purchasing program that helps pool buying power and secure discounts for residential solar. So you could put solar on the roof of your own home, but get the benefits of economies of scale since there'd be many other smaller projects going on. And we've been hosting solar power hours, 22 in all. There's still 5 more, including one tomorrow night in Solon, and then 4 others, including one in Iowa City on July 31st, and one in at our Health and Human Services building at the county on August 2nd. And again, regardless of where you live in the county, you can go to any of the power hours. If you go to solarizejohnsoncounty.com, there's a complete list of all the sessions. There's also a place to sign up. And we're very excited that we already have 32 households signed up for over 200 kW of solar power. So each home has an average of 6 kW. We've had over 500 people attending these educational sessions or signing up, and we have room for many more. So we thank you for the time. We've had some posters up here, and I just brought you all a new set of cards that list all of the upcoming sessions. Those are on the back.
And they're on the back table.
And I'll leave you a few more posters, but if there's any questions I can quickly answer for you, I'm more than happy
Any
to.
questions for Becky? Any questions from the public for Becky?
And if you don't mind, I'll just briefly add, the installer is local here to Johnson County. It's Moxie Solar of North Liberty.
Thank you so much, Becky, for coming.
Thank you.
Then we have Stephanie Gahn. Hi, Steph.
Hey, Steph Gahn, 62 Highland Drive. I just wanted to come up here and congratulate you guys on purchasing the Swisher Tract and getting it at the auction. And I don't want to be too premature on anything, but I just wondered if there was going to be like a committee formed that would, of a group of citizens that would be interested in, maybe doing some work on developing it and helping get things going. I wondered if we were going to do anything with hiring maybe some input with some professionals, or I'm really excited to think of the possibilities of a park that my kids can start playing on or hiking through in the future. So I just wondered kind of where things were going and wanted to congratulate you on the purchase of it in the first place.
Well, we're going to talk a little more about it during the mayor's report, but yes, the council has asked that we bring in some professional help, and so it's just we're in the early stages of setting it up so we can have public input and probably a citizens committee work on it too.
That'd be great.
I mean, but I'll keep you posted too, and we'll keep it on the website as the council goes through this. But yeah, we're going to talk about it a little bit
I'd be
tonight.
definitely interested in helping out in whatever fashion I can.
Oh, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
We have Jim Shemansky wrote that he wants to speak.
I'm going to read this. I'm Jim Szymanski from, I own a property at
Could you get a little closer to the microphone, Jim?
52 Olive Court. Is
Thank
that good?
you.
Can you hear? Okay. I'm going to give you one of these copies, but I'm just going
Okay.
to read it now. I've entitled this University Heights Rental Regulation Scenarios. Now that the rental property owners have had a chance to sign new leases that follow the new occupancy and parking ordinances passed by the council in the last year or so, landlords and tenants are facing situations that the council has surely anticipated in enforcing the ordinances. As a rental property owner, I would like to know how the following situations are and will be handled by the council. So I've listed out 3 having to do with the occupancy ordinance and 1 having to do with the parking. Number 1, on the occupancy, the definition of post-secondary student is somewhat perplexing to me. Does it include a student enrolling in any kind of post-secondary education? For example, real estate training, learning how to drive a tractor, learning to be a taxidermist. I don't have all these in the document here, but truck driving school. These are all post-secondary education programs. And I'm just wondering, or is it, I think the intention was just to include University of Iowa students and maybe Kirkwood, but these other people are students.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to know if I don't have this situation right now, but if 4 people came to me on a lease and said, I'm going to real estate school and I'm going to learn how to drive a steam shovel or something, how am I to consider their application?
Jim, I can.
Go ahead.
A student is a student, so this is not limited to University of Iowa students. If you're in beauty school, you're a student.
Okay.
If you're in truck driving school, you are a student.
Okay.
By the ordinance.
That's a clarification that I need. That's very good. Thank you. Now, in terms of the definition again, does enrollment in any number of hours per week, per month, per year come into play in defining a post-secondary student? So, for example, if
no,
you have, if I
there's
have
no
a tenant,
distinction in part-time or full-time enrollment.
part-time and full-time.
Yeah, as the
there's no
ordinance is
difference?
written, there's no distinction between part-time enrollment versus full-time enrollment.
Okay. So part-time, so somebody taking one course is a post-secondary student. Okay. It's important to understand that. Now, here's a situation, and again, I'm not sure. I may have one of these in the future. If a student signs a lease, in other words, this post-secondary person signs a lease as a non-student, but then at some point during the 1-year lease, they enroll in a course, are they to be removed from the property? Is there any kind of a grace period? Because that could easily happen. Somebody comes in and, leases here in the whole Johnson County usually run from August 1st to July 31st. So somebody signs and swears that they're not a student in August, but then in January they're a student. Do we have to tell them they have to move?
If you're aware of it, then you would be in violation, as I understand it.
Yeah, but if I weren't aware of it.
You've got to have 3 other students living at the property already for this to be a problem.
Right.
So if you only have 3 tenants, you'll never run into this.
Well, you won't be in violation if you only have 3 tenants, but if you had a 4th and one of them then decided to enroll, again, it doesn't matter if they enroll for a week's course.
Well, Mr. Szymanski, could you keep reading what you want? And we have a 5-minute limit.
That's fine.
And
yeah, well, I
maybe
was
questions
going to
could be answered, maybe away from the meeting,
Sure,
too.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank
I was
you.
just going to read through the whole thing.
I
was
thank
getting the answers to the questions, so I didn't
I
want to be
know.
rude.
I know. Thank you.
Okay. Number 4 on the occupancy business. Do the post-secondary rules apply to persons living in owner-occupied residences? I mean, non-rental property homes. For example, if 4 people living in a family home are enrolled in post-secondary programs, will they be cited or fined or told to vacate or stop school.
No.
Well, that seems to be
Let's just keep going.
rather
Sorry.
discriminatory.
Through it. I know, but
Okay, that's.
I know you're going to want more clarification.
I think these are things
So-
that are going to come up. That's why I'm
I
raising
I
understand.
these.
think they're excellent questions. I think for the benefit of all council, would you email all of us?
I have a copy here.
He's going to give
Yeah,
out
that'd be
copies.
And I can email it too,
I
but
have my cell
I have one more on the parking. And it has to do with the same thing with the last one on the occupancy. Do all the parking regulations that apply to the rental properties apply equally to all the owner-occupied properties?
No.
That's a simple yes or no. That's a no?
That's a no. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, you're going to pass these out now. Okay.
I'll just have one copy for you, and you can make copies, whatever.
Oh, okay. Very good. I'll have this. The clerk will do that. There's your copies. Okay. Thank you very much. Is anyone else like to speak to the council tonight? Chris has 3 emails that she was going to read.
The first one that I received was one from Juan Pablo Horcade.
Mhm.
Okay. I would like this email to be read publicly during today's meeting. My name is Juan Pablo Horcade. I reside at 416 Ridgeview Avenue. I want to express my support for the profiling ordinances to be discussed during tonight's council meeting. I have read the ordinance, and I think that with minimal overhead, it enhances the professionalism of our police department while ensuring that everyone who comes into contact with our police officers is treated fairly. From a personal perspective, I strongly support the mechanism in the ordinance that provides for a clear and simple way to lodge complaints and for an independent body to review them. When I was a teenager and young man in Virginia, my family and I were profiled on many occasions. My father attempted a complaint once when someone hit his vehicle from behind, but he got the ticket and it went nowhere. We didn't bother to complain other times, and that is likely to be the case for most people who are profiled. The only way you will be able to tell if you have a problem is if you have a mechanism like the one in the proposed ordinance. Hence, based on my personal experience, I strongly endorse the ordinance and urge all council members will support it. I received another email forwarded from John Whiston. It says, Sylvia, our apologies for being so slow. We explained we have been on the road to the family cabin in the mountains of Wyoming, and it does not have internet or cell service. But now we are down at the Grable Public Library with internet access, and we can get back in touch. We are glad to let you and the council know our thoughts about the proposed racial profiling ordinance. We are strongly in favor of it. It is a well-thought-out and well-crafted response to a difficult problem that faces every jurisdiction, including little ones like University Heights. We've had personal experiences with this issue. Our Latina house sitter and her African-American boyfriend were pulled over for no reasonable suspicion, purely, we believe, because they looked out of place in our neighborhood. That is, of course, purely code for racial discrimination. When we complained, we were met with a response from the former chief we felt was uninformed and unsympathetic. So purely on a basis of a single incident, there is good reason to make a policy statement that this form of policing will not be allowed in our town. As you may know, both of us have been for years active in the criminal justice system in Johnson County, as well as countywide efforts toward racial justice. Over and over, we have heard the opinion voiced that University Heights police officers routinely stop drivers for the stereotyped offense of driving while black or brown or even foreign-looking. Those opinions coming from criminal defense lawyers were pulled over or just ordinary citizens suggests that there is a widespread perception of our community that needs to be addressed. The only mechanism that has proven successful in addressing such racial and ethnic disparities is the documentation requirements in the proposed ordinance. As the experience of Iowa City and Davenport have shown, only when there is sufficient data can law enforcement and city government begin to identify the extent and the causes of such problems and then to effectively deal with them. We commend you for bringing this up. We would ordinarily be glad to attend any council session where this issue would be discussed, but we will be out of town all week, the week of August 20th until mid-September. So hope this letter will suffice to convey our support for the racial profiling ordinance. Dorothy Woods Winston, John B. Winston, 317 Mahaska Drive. And then I have one forwarded from Donald Baxter. To the Council and University Heights Police, I'm here to split this issue down the middle. I am a University Heights resident, I'm a pedestrian and a cyclist. Those are two things that are incompatible with high vehicular speeds through University Heights. I wish drivers would see speed limits for what they are, the limit, not the minimum speed from which to negotiate up. I doubt speeding tickets are written for anything below 35 miles per hour on Melrose Sunset or below 30 on our neighborhood streets assigned at 20 miles per hour. These are appropriate limits. Perhaps Iowa City should enforce more. Speed does matter to pedestrians and cyclists. Most pedestrians hit at 20 miles per hour get to live. Most pedestrians hit at 30 do not survive. I do not see violations of our speed limits as a freedom issue. Driving is a privilege, not a right. I served on the board of directors of the ACLU of Georgia for 4 years. I do not see speeding as a civil liberties issue unless law enforcement starts looking for racial bias. What I do see as a potential problem is this. I always look to see who is being pulled over when I see a traffic stop, and I'd say about 1/3 of the time it is people of color, and often the persons pulled over are people who have out-of-county plates. I'd like to see the city keep racial statistics of who gets pulled over and who gets warned. I'd like to see statistics broken down about local versus out-of-town drivers as well. I'd like to see more warnings written to people who are not familiar with our region. I'd like to see University Heights signage at the city limits be more obvious. If you blink, that sign is missed. There are ways to calm our traffic in our town, and we should institute those tactics. I also realize that the plural of antidote does not equal a statistic, but a perception is not totally devoid of reality. If University Heights looks like a place that is racial profiling, then steps must be taken to remove that suspicion. One thing I like about University Heights is how easy it is to be a pedestrian and a bike commuter here, but I want the law to be enforced firmly and with fairness. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind the Cedar Rapids Gazette that the University Heights was never founded as a city within a city. It was founded as a vehicle to avoid township school taxes. Iowa City did not surround us in 1935 as we were more likely to have been surrounded by cornfields. Iowa City surrounded University Heights, not a place that miraculously extracted itself from Iowa City. Best regards, Donald Baxter, 316 Ridgeview Avenue.
Would anyone else like to speak to the council? Okay, we're going to move. Maggie Berger is here from Spear Financial with John Murphy. And Maggie, do you want to come up to the microphone and talk about the bidding that took place today? And because this is going to take 5-6 minutes.
That is correct. I'm going to keep you to the time that I said I would. Maggie Berger with Spear Financial. I have John Murphy here from our office. He was here with me a few months ago. Today we took bids on $555,000 of general obligation corporate purpose bonds, Series 2018A. This is the first issuance that you as a council decided to do based on the land purchase, and this really is for the purchase price, probably some planning, and to pay yourself back the earnest money. We had a discussion with a council member before. We're recommending you pay yourself back. You borrowed local option sales tax from yourself. We're recommending that you pay that back because, as you remember in our scenarios, you're going to use that local option sales tax to make debt payments on the bonds until your hotel motel tax starts to come in once that is completed, that project is completed. So as you can see from the bottom of the letter that we've sat in front of you this evening, Bankers Bank of Madison, Wisconsin bid a 2.913%. It is the low interest rate, and we are recommending that you would award to them. By state law, you are required to either award to the low interest rate or reject all of the bids, and we are not recommending that you reject the bids tonight because they are very good bids. We did have 3 bids, and on page 2 of the handout, those 3 bids are broken down. Bankers Bank bid a price of 99.25%. I will remind you, they could have bid 99.2, so they did do just a little less than what they said they would. Their interest rates range from a 2.4 down to a 3%, giving you that true interest rate of 2.9130. If you pay these bonds early prepayment, you will pay about $97,396 in total interest. UMB Bank, it should be noted, was your cover bid. They did have Hills Bank and Trust Company bidding with them. We don't know from Bankers Bank if they have anyone bidding. They did not express that they had anyone bidding to us today on the phone. But after they know they've been awarded, a lot of times they do reach out. They are like UMB in the fact that they are a bank for banks. And so they are going to market this not only locally but regionally across the state of Iowa. So. And then D.A. Davidson came in third place at a 2.9942%. The third page is our final debt service schedule. So this just breaks this down for you. In June of 19, because you do not have a levy in place or any other means, you will just be using cash to make an interest-only payment. You will start paying principal and interest in June of 2020. After the June 1st, 2024 date, there's a call feature, and that means that's your optional redemption. That's the date you can call the bonds in early. You can either call them in, redeem them early. You can just hold on to them and continue to pay them at your low interest rate if reinvestment rates are higher. And you also can refund them. So if interest rates drop below 2.8 or 3%, there's an opportunity to look at a refunding at that time as well. The last page of our attachment is similar to what you had seen when we were talking about the full amount. We've now just updated this to say it's $555,000. It's the 2018 bonds. Now we're using local option sales tax in that beige column, just the amount that you need in the first fiscal year, and really a proportionate share, we'll say. We're still showing in the green column that you would levy about 50 cents. Depending on your next bond issue, when that bond issue is, when you decide what your borrowing needs are going to be after you've had professional assistance, citizen input, and you decide what your projects are going to include, we will go ahead and be able to wrap the new debt on top of this existing debt and still be in the position that we assumed we would be in. And that was levying a 50-cent levy if we have to. We may not have to levy that 50 cents. You may not have to levy all of that. That will always be the goal, to not levy what we don't have to levy for. The way that we've provided this, though, is to show you proportionately what we were looking at when we were looking at the 1.8 schedule, the 2 million schedule, the 1.5. We wanted to show you kind of in that same format. So we will work with you as a council. Our time with you doesn't end now. We will work with you as a council, especially at budget time, and determining your next bond issue, whenever that may be, for whatever projects those may be, and help you determine if you will need to do a levy or not need a levy based on the cash that you have available to you. With that, I'd answer any questions, but we would recommend you take action on the two items ahead of you this evening for resolutions for authorizing and for the levying of the taxes. And really what you're doing there is saying you're giving yourself the authorization to levy in the future for the taxes. You get to make that determination each and every year at your budget. You're not locking yourself into a levy right now.
So let me ask you a question. Can that levy resolution be revisited closer to budget time?
Absolutely. No, you have to take action to approve both documents tonight, both resolutions. Otherwise, you don't authorize the debt. The item that gets discussed, the levy resolution is only giving you authorization. When you hand that over to the county auditor, you're just saying, we've done everything we're supposed to do legally to authorize us to do a levy. They will not levy the taxes at the county unless you have a levy in your budget. So you get to make that determination as part of your budget public hearing and your budget process and approval. But you have to take action to approve both resolutions this evening, or we will not be able to close on July 26th.
All right, so I will motion. I will motion both elements in one motion. I'd like to authorize the issuance of the bond for as noted in the Spears financial document from today. And the second part to that motion is the authorization of the levy authorization notice to the county. And is there a second vote?
I'll second.
Okay.
By Dottie.
And this is for both 1835 and 1836, correct?
What?
1835 and 1836.
Yep.
Do you want it, you can do it together like that? Is that okay with you, legal?
Yes, that is okay.
Okay. Any discussion? Oh, and we'll have the money, why don't you say when we're going to have the money?
So you're going to have your money on July 26th. That's the day of closing. So that's about 4 days ahead of when you have to have your money for the closing on the land purchase. So you will have your money in plenty of time to be able to organize and prepare for that closing.
Super.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote.
Miller,
Aye.
Moore. Aye. Maher.
Aye.
Katsada.
Aye.
Herbal.
Aye.
Carried.
Okay, so I need to.
I just have one copy. You can keep the other one.
And then
Okay, so
who is
this
doing that
what I
organizing
sign.
on July 26th?
From a closing perspective, you will just receive a wire that day from Bankers Bank, and we will monitor that along with bond counsel and let you know that that money is in the bank. And then it will be up to you, and I'm sure that you've
Treasurer.
already prepared for that closing on the land.
Okay, thank you.
There's not a whole lot that goes into the 26th.
We get two
It sounds like
copies.
a big
It's
deal, but you
both,
just get your
it's
money
the same thing.
So Lori, I guess you'll be
So we
monitoring
keep-
the inbox for the city account.
Yeah, we will pick up the phone and call and send as many emails as you want to let you know the money.
So one stays with the city and
One
one's.
stays with the city and one comes with it. Thank you all very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll go to the streets and sidewalks and a discussion and consideration of Triangle Park improvement options. And Dottie, you and Josiah are going to talk about this. Do we have Rotary here tonight?
Yes. So we'll discuss it first and then we'll
Okay.
introduce them.
Josiah, I asked Josiah if he'd go through a little bit of the history of the previous council to now and how they got to sitting down and talking about the plans. Could you do a brief summary of that? I think it's good information for council.
Okay. Well, so everybody knows the visioning project occurred last year, and that was
60.
ended up in this report here, which included a number of items all throughout the city, including the Triangle Park steps for enhancements, which included a cost estimate at that time, and then some sketches of what that could look like. I'm sure everybody has seen that issue. So the background on where we're at today with the proposals for the proposed improvements to the park, where we're at now, both the original concept and then the follow-up from last meeting with the phase one, was started with meeting with Dottie and Jim Lane, and actually started with this document here, looking at this plan and the costs. At that time, we sort of went through what was in there and the concepts and the costs, and sort of some direction that those costs were pretty high for what we were looking for, and how could we do some of it or part of it, or what could be done. So as we started working through that, that's what you see behind you is up there. What I tried to do related to taking the visioning plan or the visioning concept, and also being aware of that Melrose streetscape project in the coming years, was to, one, sort of stay away from the Melrose side as much as possible, just because that is going to be all redone. And so we focused on everything back further in the park, away from the intersection, away from Melrose, and the plan or the concept that came up there was trying to take the pieces of the visioning project, which showed a shelter to replace the existing shelter back by the evergreens, a bench underneath. That plan had bike racks and the drinking fountain. It had, like I said, the pavers and the landscaping. So it was, so there's the other images of the different site amenities. But so it took all those and tried to reduce them in scale, move them away from Melrose for the time being, reduce them to reduce the costs that were estimated, but still provide the same features into the park setting. So that was sort of the genesis or how we got to where we are today, starting from the visioning project.
And then why don't you go through the two plans?
Well, or maybe also you should explain to this council that there was a resolution and there was also a mayoral letter to support that. So I think, you talk to Steve, he would.
Well, Steve had sent that response to council today and copied the letter and the resolution.
Okay.
And maybe you didn't get a copy of that.
I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sometimes when you send out, I know you have. But that was sent out to the council, and in it he shows the letter, the mayor's letter. He shows the resolution, and then he gives his opinion, and it says, "In my opinion, the council's prior action to support the Rotary Club's grant application, resolution number 1709, does not constitute a legally binding commitment to expend city funds on the Triangle Park project. If the council desires to expend city funds for the park project, the council should adopt a resolution or motion to the effect specifying the purpose of the expenditure, purchase and/or installation of equipment, etc., and the dollar amount." Mm-hmm. And that's I know that's a little bit of a summary, but
Well, in response to his opinion, I have a contrary opinion as an attorney.
mm-hmm.
And the prior council made a commitment, and the commitment was premised on my commitment to Rotary, and they acted on the reliance that the city's word and that my word were, not to be negated by a subsequent council. So there is basic misunderstanding when one council doesn't assume the responsibility of a previous council. And this is a good example of that problem. But I'd also like to talk a little bit about the project.
That's what I was. Do you want to talk about it instead of Josiah?
Yeah,
Okay.
Then Josiah he's already indicated this is a direct
No, that's fine.
outflow from the Vision Project. I'm going to start by negating Mike's email of today and clarifying some issues, because this was patterned after the Visioning Project, which I chaired, and the costs here are 1/2 the cost of the Visioning Project. And the grant for Melrosescape is another thing I have audited with or edited with Josiah and JCMP. And Josiah is the person that will be deciding how that grant is designed and implemented. So he has indicated today and previously that the Melrose sidewalk would encroach 5 feet into Triangle Park. So it's reasonable to, plan around it, which we have done. Now, part of that will then be to move the sidewalk on Kosher over 5 feet. That can be delayed until the Melrosescape, comes to fruition.
So where's the sidewalk in the drawing, in this drawing right here? The
Where's
Melrose
what?
sidewalk is where it currently is, correct?
The dark
So
sidewalk here is this new sidewalk.
I understand the Kozer sidewalk
Yeah.
is
It's
being
the-
proposed
it's
to be moved,
five-
but what about the Melrose sidewalk? What's happening to the Melrose sidewalk after the Melrose
It'll be
streetscape?
5 feet in. Is that
In?
not correct, Josiah?
Yeah, 5 or 6 feet in.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens to all that brick paver?
It won't go up. It will only go to. Josiah can talk to that.
Chris, do you have that phase 1 drawing as well? The one. If not, that's okay.
It's like 3 pages down if you're looking through the council packet.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
That one. Yeah, if you could pan up there.
See,
I
that's
know, it's not easy, is it?
So after the June 25th meeting, subsequently this was set out as an option for a phase 1 or first phase implementation. And you can see, I haven't gone back and adjusted the full concept, but that takes into account, you can see that the top side of the sheet or the Melrose sidewalk, the pavers stop shorter or further from the walk than they do on Kozer. So in the future, when that Melrose walk goes through, it'll be,
Okay.
it'll, mirror both sides.
so the pavers will not be disturbed then.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the realization or the change there.
Yeah.
And that's why it's longer on one side than the other.
Another point that Mike made that I want to clarify. He said that the shelter should be turned toward Melrose and moved closer. This is not a bus shelter. This is a aesthetic shelter to improve and make Rotary Park very, very attractive. It is not a stop for the bus. That is not the focus for it. It would also have the possibility of blocking visibility, which would not be acceptable. And as for the bus passengers being, wanting to be sure that they aren't sitting in the rain, there's an app now for the bus so that they can track the bus and they know when to get to the bus stop. So, and there's also something that we call an umbrella. So I believe that that would take care of that. Now, as far as the library is concerned, I called Boy Scouts of Eastern Iowa 6 times, and they finally called back and indicated that they were not interested in rehabbing the little library, that had been a project of Eagle Scouts years ago, that the Eagle Scouts now were not interested in shelters for books under any circumstances, and that as far as they were concerned, I could do with them as I saw fit. So we did not destroy them. We've caged them over in Paul Moore's garage. We are planning on building a new library. It will not be on Triangle Park. It will be on another public city spot. So that is happening. I just wanted to clarify that, I would never tear them down without checking the source, and that was their answer. So the books that were in the book library are now over here at the City Community Center. And that is the gist of the comments from Mike this morning. But I want to circulate, in case all of you don't have it, the original Triangle Park plan, and you can take one and pass them around.
Thank you.
And this is the plan as Jim and Josiah and I put together for the new park. And so I am asking tonight for the whole Monty here. I want the park as it was envisioned in the beginning, with a few exceptions. And I've got costs here, which I photocopied for you all. Or for some of you, you might have to look on to those. I don't think I have maybe enough of those. And the 68,000, as you can see, is half of the cost of the original Vision project. And I would be willing to take out, for now, the bike racks and the trash receptacle, because we do not have anybody to routinely clear up the trash, and so it would not be emptied promptly, and I certainly don't want it overflowing there, so it's better to not have a trash receptacle. The removal of the sidewalk, we can remove that. And then the topsoil seeding and soil, we can manage to handle that with work from volunteers. The tree trimming, I have already stepped up and paid for out of my pocket. I've got to get this thing moving. I am tired of waiting. We've had 2 or 3 years here from the Vision Project onward, and it's got to be approved tonight. So,
Could you
So where
explain
does that
why-
leave us with a total cost, and how much does the city portion need to be?
it's all provided for within this. Let me see here.
I mean, I remember the ballpark estimates of where the money is coming from earlier, but
Yeah.
that is not a part of what
Just a minute.
has been handed out.
Let's see. The city is contributing 5,000.
There's 5,000 in the budget already for this year.
I don't know, Jim must have put it in because Jim indicated last year that it's in the budget. So I don't know. Is it in the budget is the question.
It better be.
The
Yeah.
5,000 is in the budget from what,
Well, it
from
has to be.
previous, I
It
mean,
has to be
that's
from-
what you
It
two
is.
said at the last time we discussed this.
I'm not sure what line item, because it's all aggregated at this point, but
Okay.
it would be, it has to come out of the budget.
It's 5,000, and the community club contributed 1,000, and then we're the 10,000 road repair on Marietta is going to cost only 6, so there's 4,000 from there.
I'm sorry, what?
So I believe, and
4,000
Rotary
from Rotary.
grant. Pardon me.
Okay, so city is at 5,000, community center is 1,000,
I don't know what that means.
community
And-
fund,
And Marietta is 4.
Marietta redirection.
You're taking money off of the Marietta
Yes.
road repair.
Well, we got a better price for instead of 10,000, it's going to cost 6.
So the first quotes we got for that project were less by about 4,000.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
That's what she's talking
So that's covered. Our grant from Rotary in hard cash would be 10 grand, and then the remainder from Rotary will be work, quality care from Corville is going to do a couple $1,000s worth of work over there, and the other remaining 25 or 23,000 or whatever is
Do we have like documentation from the Rotary on what their contribution is? Because the last time we discussed this, the number was
they're
8,000.
here tonight and they can speak to that.
Okay.
And then the money from the Marriott, there's
ULP.
the cash, the money was pledged, and I'm asking Jim if they can accelerate that to the point of what we need.
Right. So then that brings you up to,
And that brings us up to actually 70,000, and we're only going to need
so
61,728.
you could remove the city's 5,000 contribution from either Marietta or the city general fund.
So you're using the whole 50,000 from the
Yeah,
Marietta
yes.
on this project?
Yes.
No, she's using all 50,000 from ULP first, then Rotary, so we're down to
Exactly.
60.
So instead of
So then you
20, 10, 10, 10,
Yeah, we're
we're using
accelerating.
all
Yeah.
50
Yes.
on this part.
That's right.
Yes.
So we went back and we asked ULP to please accelerate. So legal, we will need assistance in maybe executing a letter of intent or something to memorialize new terms, because the development agreement has a different schedule. So we're just fast-tracking payment. Thank you very much, Jim and Greg.
The Rotary figure that is in this letter is $8,750.
What did you say?
The Rotary Grant money that's in the letter from the mayor is $8,750.
They can talk to the council, so. Mike, do you want to speak, or Steve?
Oh, here they are.
This is
Hi.
Steve Quigley. He is the new president of our Noon Rotary Club.
Well, good evening, and thank you for allowing us to be here today. I'm with Mike McKay as well. You're right, it's the 8750. 5,000 of that was coming from our club. 3750 was coming from our district grant, which we have received. And I think there was some
There was-
dollars that we'd have for some sweat equity volunteer that we would help, I think.
But Mike also said today that there was half again. What did you say? Half again from the let's see, the grant was only the district was 3750, but then you had indicated that there, because somehow we got to 10.
Might have been
No.
through some of the volunteer, but
No,
our
the-
8750 is what we had
The volunteer is in addition.
approved and budgeted, so.
Yeah, that's
But-
my understanding, is 8750.
But the challenge we have, and I want to make sure that the board is clear on this, we have certain time limits that we've got to be able to spend the money, and the project has to be done before we can, provide that district grant money and our money. And that date, I don't remember exactly, but I think it's September of this year that the whole project would have to be done, or we have to give the money back to the district. And when you do those kinds of things, we rely on district grants every year, and we can't start our next district grant until a project is completed and a write-up and what have you, that we'd have to supply to the district. And when they give out those funds, one, you appreciate it, because again, it's money that's coming back obviously to us to be able to put into the communities. So we have, I think, a little bit of a challenge there, and I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page there, because if we can't get that done, we've got another district grant that's sitting out there for this next year that we can't do until this one gets done, and if we can't meet deadlines, we're going to have
And-
to look at probably pulling.
Is the
that
funding
fund.
from Rotary tied to a $68,000 park? Or if we do a scaled back version of this park, is that funding still available?
We would probably have to take that back to our
Yeah, 'cause
our grant committee, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But it has to be completed, so
Yeah.
I don't,
And the whole project has
the
to be
whole
complete.
project,
By
yeah, not
September
just,
1st?
I'm sorry.
September 1st?
Well, by September 23rd or whenever we received the
Yeah.
district grant
We're
money
ready.
last year, because again,
I
the
see.
thought process was
Was
is
to
that
be done
it
this
would have
year.
been done
yes.
this year.
Like the end
So,
of summer.
yeah. Now, that's not to say that if we, I hate to say pull, but I'll just use that word, but
Yeah.
if we pulled it, that doesn't mean that we couldn't use it for a grant for the next fiscal year, but it wouldn't be for this year, because then we have another grant that is out there for this year
I
that
see.
is waiting on this one to be done, if that makes sense. So I just want to make sure I'm very clear on that, because again, we do have some time limits on that.
And if we were to
And,
do
and
a
also,
smaller,
if we don't get the products ordered, you know, with the interest rates increasing and the fact that there will be possible tariffs on this metal, that, you know, we aren't going to get the pricing that we have here, or, you know, it won't get here in time to do it by planting season, you know, so it's got to be done.
What was your question, Virginia?
if we were, I mean, if we can't make this happen this year, and if we were to pursue a more modest renovation of the park next year, do you expect that the level of funding available would be lower?
Well, first of all, we'd have to put it in as a new grant.
Sure, and there's no guarantee on what
and
that
again,
would.
I'll just be honest with you as well. There's other grant opportunities that come up, so it might not even be one that could be selected. I mean, that would be up to our board to decide that, and our district grant committee that would make that presentation. So, Virginia, I couldn't commit to that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
understand. Josiah, did you touch base with someone from Tallgrass about?
Do you have
Maybe
any
some of
more,
these
does the board
furnishings.
have any more questions for Mr. Quigley?
Well, Virginia just asked about getting better prices from Tallgrass.
Yeah, I did touch base with Felicia.
Was there
last week.
anything
Haven't
useful
gotten
there?
Got any feedback yet.
Okay.
Why don't you just have a seat
She
then?
knew
I
the
think we're
deadline
finished.
was
Thank you.
today, but
Okay.
maybe she didn't hear back.
So,
Because she's
What prices are we talking about? You ask about prices, what prices?
Yeah, somebody in town works for Tallgrass, and they do park furnishings like this as a supplier, and she thought she could probably get a better price on what we had quoted here, but I don't think we heard back from her in time.
Well, we've searched for the products we want, so we don't want anything else. I mean, as an illustration, I
Well-
used Total Tree Care because I
So-
needed to have people that could climb up those trees, that could prune, and that could do it and circle cut the low branches so that the trees would not be damaged. So
yeah, so it looks like Rotary has a deadline, and if we are going to use Rotary Grant money, we have to do
If we're
it.
going to do it, we have to do it tonight.
We have to,
So we have to get the products ordered.
So,
right.
So I have a pertinent tidbit of information. So that date, that September 20th, it's about 10 weeks from today. So the shelter's like 12 weeks to get the shelter.
Okay.
Would they
So we
accelerate
are
them?
already not going to get that deadline.
well,
What's that?
there's making substantial steps. Would Rotary accept like 80% completion of the project?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. No,
And
thank you for quantifying.
and you've been very patient. You've been very
So,
patient.
You could look at a different type of shelter that could be
No,
delivered.
no, we've looked and looked, and
Well, you can't.
Then I think this discussion is over.
so then it won't happen.
It could happen at a later time.
Oh, maybe, maybe not.
I think it
I
certainly
mean-
could, and I think that I have not heard overwhelming support from anyone
I've heard
for
a
this plan, and I have heard people say, why didn't we scale down the visioning project with that
Because I think
striking design?
we have
Why
a
do
we have a
need to put in all
temptation.
these
Well,
extra
let her speak
things?
about
Yeah,
Why do we
it's
need a
same-
drinking fountain? I mean, you're telling people to carry an umbrella. We don't need a shelter. People, we live in the days of carrying our own water bottles and our own collapsible dog bowl.
Well, the Vision Project, was voted on by every citizen in University Heights.
It was
And-
voted on by every citizen.
That's quite a claim.
For a year, we met.
When did we vote on that?
Well, we met every year and chose those things that we wanted to improve. You may not have been there, Lisa.
Well, it
Then
sounds
that's not
like
every citizen.
well, it sounds like we can't complete the project in 10 weeks. which is the Rotary deadline.
It does.
That's what Josiah just said.
Because we have delayed along.
Here's a happy medium. Why don't we go in the middle? We approve the resolution and we find out tomorrow what it takes to accelerate that shelter or to find a comparable substitute. And we complete this project in 10 weeks. We can do it. It's just a matter of making some phone calls and pushing the producer.
We have talked to
No,
Josiah
if
and
that
I
doesn't
have-
work, then we're on the hook for that money. I mean, that's not an acceptable level of risk for me. But that doesn't really address the problems with this park renovation that I see. What is the point of a shelter if it's not for people who are waiting for the bus? I think
It isn't a bus shelter. It is to enhance
But
the.
who's going to go there? I mean, the current one is used mainly as a public restroom.
Well, a lot of people walk a lot, and they walk with their dogs, and they sit down there and rest.
Can I have a question for clarification? Is the 5,000 and the 3,750 the same rules for both of those, or is the okay? Yeah, it's all one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've had plenty of people several people say that, why do we need to rush into this? Why do we need to do
Rushing?
this right now? Why don't we wait until we do the streetscape and do it all at once?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of different opinions on what people want and how they want to see it done. But one thing that I have heard from just about everyone is, don't take money from fixing streets and use it to fix up.
We aren't taking it from streets.
Well, you have $4,000 you've saved.
Yes.
So here's
But it
how
my
was
budget.
suggested not using
So here's
that.
what I'm saying. We're missing out on the big picture here, and that is we've got a $10,000 grant. We've been told by the grantees that, you can take your risk, roll the dice, and see if you come back and get $10,000. We all know how difficult it is to even get $1,000 to close our budget, when we were having our budget discussions. And to stop this to stop this planning really is also questionable, because we've been working on it since 2016. We brought in, the genesis of this was Virginia applied for a grant, and we had a transition of a new council. Dottie Maher took over steering that grant that resulted in approximately a good 18 months of community discussion involving every age bracket in the city, with a lot of feedback. So there isn't a historical record for leaving anyone out. There's plenty of announcements, plenty of public meetings, and plenty of showcasing of what potential this envisioning program had at the farmers market, at the athletic club, many, many other occasions. So the bottom line is, we either make an attempt to complete a project that we started, or we just abandon it for face it. You just don't want to invest in the city now, and you have no interest in transforming Triangle Park, which, by the way, I'm thinking is not even a park. I think you have a plaza. Maybe we should call it Triangle Plaza. So the way I'm looking at it is, we have $10,000 of free money. Why walk away? I use coupons every time I shop. I'm teaching my son to shop with coupons. And who doesn't want to use a $10,000 grant, courtesy of a group of folks that have been participating in our city for decades, and who would like to see some spiffying up of an area that they're willing to do two things for. One, put in cold cash, and two, put some sweat equity, because I understand some of your members are doing some sweat equity out of their own pocket, and it's not being reflected in that $10,000 grant. So actually, your contribution, President Quigley, is actually a lot higher than $10,000. So as far as I'm concerned, Josiah has made some sensible, common sense steering away from complicated street improvements that will happen in 2021. And I think that's the responsible way of handling that and still accomplishing the project. So also, we have the Marriott Hotel team. They're amending the terms of their agreement with the city to accelerate a $50,000 payment. Now, that is two payments, $10,000 from Rotary, $50,000 from the Marriott. That's $60,000. So
Also, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think we should be accelerating those payments. I think we should take the $20,000 that we have from them and do a $20,000 remodel to this park and work within that budget.
What? I can't hear you.
Sorry. I don't think we should be accelerating the payments from the Marriott Hotel. I think they should come in as they were previously planned to. I think we should take the $20,000 that they were willing to put up this year and put it into Triangle Park. I don't think we should do a $70,000 project there.
Well, maybe we should have taken, or can we now take some money from the Swisher Tract, which you have a little extra sitting around.
I would not support that.
Yeah, I know you wouldn't support that, but we could have had a lot more borrowing at a low interest rate.
And I still wouldn't support putting $70,000 into a piece of land this small.
For your shorthand vision.
Can I ask another Rotary question? I think you had mentioned you might be able to send it back to a committee if we did a scaled down project. Is that true that you could send it back to a committee this year with a scaled down project? That could not.
No.
So it's okay.
We already have another one already in
Right.
place, ready for our next fiscal year, which is just taking effect. So
Okay.
it would have to go off the board, and then it would have to go to the committee to see if it would even be one for the future.
Right.
Sure.
So
To get the money from Rotary, we had to approve the plan, the $70,000 plan 2 weeks ago. I mean,
I just don't
and that's
understand
not
that.
an
That
option
we
to us
didn't. We
tonight.
just learned about it 2 weeks ago.
No,
that's
you
what I'm
didn't just learn about it.
We did just learn about it
we
2
just
weeks
saw
ago,
the
Dottie.
plan 2 weeks ago.
Well, yeah, we've been
Right, we
working
just-
on it. Just
We've been asking you to show us the plan for 2 months
We
before
have
that, and
been
you wouldn't show
working
it.
on it, Virginia.
Again, we asked to see it.
Jim Lane was included, so and this is nothing off the top of our heads.
And the
But it
plan,
doesn't look at all like the visioning plan that was
Well,
presented.
Then you can look to Josiah, who's our engineer, and has made a very pretty, attractive improvement on the original vision plan
So
at half the cost.
And I don't agree with that
And
half the cost. I mean,
we're gonna have
look
to.
at the lines, you know, the breakout of the cost. There are things that are not
In
that
your
are in this
opinion?
vision plan cost that are not on yours.
I think we're going to have to move on from this discussion because the pressing matter was we didn't want to lose the Rotary money, and it turns out we already lost it 2 weeks ago.
How is that possible? I mean, how? Josiah doesn't even know if that's even. That's why I said it's premature to say we've lost it when we haven't made a phone call to
Because
the
we
distributor.
can't get the stuff in time.
We don't know that.
I mean, that was the lead time on the shelter.
Yeah, but that's just lead time. I've worked, utility companies. We've got lead times all the time. Let's
So
find out if they can
that's
bump
where-
it up.
That's where I came up with it.
Could we call again, Josiah, and
Right. I
see
think
if
that's the
there's
prudent thing to
any
do
way
is just
we
rule
could
it out.
accelerate that, maybe?
Yeah, we can always ask the question. Doesn't.
Yeah.
That's right.
Nothing lost.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
I'm still not, I don't know if there's consensus to do that right now.
Call and get another to see.
I mean, just consensus with the council to even decide to move
I
on.
still wouldn't want to be moving forward with a $70,000 renovation. And if we choose the scaled back plan, we don't get the Rotary money because their money is tied to the $70,000 plan. Is that correct? Yeah.
And Lisa, you agree?
I agree.
Nick, what's your opinion?
No, I agree. I mean, it sounds like we don't have the money, and so there's nothing to really decide right now. 'Cause
But
we're
we
not
do
gonna
have the
because the
money.
lead time, is just greater than what we have to work with.
Well, we don't know.
We
about the
don't
lead
know
time.
that for
That's the only
sure.
thing I'm curious about is a lead time.
Would you be comfortable with a $70,000 park if the lead
Yeah, I
time
mean,
turned out to be
I've
not a problem?
I've heard some pretty strong feedback that people are very surprised that this much money would go into such a small park. And I don't know, I wasn't on council, before when there have been previous discussions. And I think this is just a product of we just didn't have things ready in time to get feedback from the community. The feedback that I've received over the last 2 weeks has not been positive. There might be positive feedback out there. I just haven't heard that, to invest that much money in that area.
Well, it's a quality park and quality equipment, and it puts a a fresh face on a very trashy-looking entryway to University Heights. If we're going to change the city, where else is a better place to do it than the first thing they see when they drive in and the last thing they see when they drive out? It's a lovely little area across from the flower garden. And it could be, like Sylvia said, a lovely plaza. It isn't a bus shelter. I mean, if you want to throw up a phone booth on the corner of it for your bus shelter, fine. You know, I mean, if you want to dumb the place down so it looks exactly what I've said, you know, then you're headed in the right direction. I think it's time to make a change and to step up and make this, put a new face on the community, which was the purpose of the Vision Project. So, you know, it's pathetic that we spend as much money on other divisions of the city.
Well,
And
the good news here is we have 10,000 more to spend on street repairs this year, and it's not
Well,
we're not lacking in
dear,
streets that need repairs.
10,000 would do nothing for street repairs. They are a pile of you know what. The streets and sidewalks are despicable. It would take more money than we have paid on the Swisher Tract.
I'm not hearing consensus from the council, but we could,
I just need to know if it's possible to get it any quicker.
Well-
'cause it's been delayed so far.
right. But I know that on the 25th, you were doing everything in your power to, after that, from the 25th to the 10th here, to get things going fast.
But I'm relying on Josiah to make the call, and I'm wondering if he called again and said the project is dependent upon, you're accelerating the delivery by, 2 weeks, whatever.
I'm just not hearing support for the, even if it is,
Well,
for the park. Is that
Fine.
right? It's the whole cost
Yeah.
is what I'm hearing. And there's,
well, it's a
from
pile
the
of,
council.
I can't use the term on public meeting, but it is a mess now. And part of the reason that Rotary wanted to improve it is because it is a spot where everybody sees the park. It is a lovely area of peace and tranquility. And Rotary has given so much throughout the world to make many things a better place and many people much healthier and happier. And this is another opportunity for us to benefit. But if you want to turn your back on that effort from a nonprofit, well, have at it.
I'm very appreciative of what Rotary has done so far. It sounds like they've been very patient. My hope in the future is that we can get these plans out there, get some feedback. I'm hearing not only about the cost, but also that we've got this whole bus stop issue that sounds like a lot of people feel pretty strongly about.
It doesn't belong there.
Well, and I'm not making these decisions based on my personal preference. I don't ride the bus down there, but I would like to know, from people who do, what their thoughts are and from the community as a whole. Unfortunately, I just don't think we had enough time after getting the plans. And I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying the plans came out 2 weeks ago or whatever, and I've heard a lot of feedback since then that puts me in a position where I'm not comfortable pledging city money, especially since we have a huge doubt that we're going to actually be able to get the Rotary money even if we did pledge the city money tonight. So that would be my position.
Okay. And that's what you two agree. So we don't have consensus tonight. So I'm sorry to the Rotary that.
Well,
gonna
we're
have
all
to
sorry.
withdraw.
And as a Rotarian, I'm humiliated and embarrassed beyond sorry. I think it's a slap
There was
in the
just a lot of
face.
things that didn't get it forward to get public input. There's also a process the city has to go through, to get public input,
But see, the grant initially
know.
was premised on the Vision Project, which was very clear about what they wanted. So it's been out there for 3-4 years. So that, I'm sorry, Louise, I know you mean well, but that's not an excuse. The council's unable to support a grant. That is really the bottom line.
Well, thanks again for coming. We appreciate it, and we appreciate what you were doing for us, but it just doesn't work out on our timeline right now. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll go on to, we needed to move a couple of things up on the agenda because Sylvia says there's a few people here that want to talk about. We're going to her committee that's prohibiting discriminatory policy practices, no profiling. Did you want to
I did. Thank you.
speak?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, for moving up the 2 agenda items, prohibiting discriminatory policing practices, no profiling, and zero funding for discriminatory housing practices by the city. The first ordinance for consideration by this council is presented tonight, consistent with open meeting laws. This ordinance is here for consideration publicly, and our public is here. I want to thank you for taking time to write in, to let us know your support, and to be here to express your support. Councilors had since early Saturday morning on July 7th to review this ordinance. It's 4 pages, it's in plain English, and takes no more than about an hour to read and process. The ordinance reflects best practices and originates from the ACLU, Iowa, and is supported by the NAACP Iowa City chapter. Both of these groups have significant experience on the issue of discriminatory profiling. This ordinance, in my view, is a policy statement by our community that our police department does good work without discriminatory profiling, and it stands by the data collected to prove that point. It sets high standards of performance for our police officers and provides the public with assurances that they will be treated fairly as they travel through our community. This ordinance does not prohibit profiling where a suspect description is made in a specific manner. Other cities outside of Iowa, such as Providence, Rhode Island, have even higher standards of performance for anti-profiling ordinances, which our tiny city doesn't have the resources to support. For example, having translators called in to help our police officers when there's communication problems. This ordinance helps professionalize our police department. It provides strong safeguards for fair treatment of people who come into contact with our police officers. It works within our city budget. It adds minimal work to our police officers, and if profiling isn't an issue in University Heights, there should be very little work for the review board to do. So I'd like to open discussion with my fellow counselors to discuss the ordinance before you. And general comments you've had since Saturday morning, and I do want to let you know that unfortunately, I couldn't get this out any sooner because it was being reviewed by so many different people who are more experienced and have much more knowledge base than I do on profiling. So this is not a work product that I just came up with. It has nothing to do with my own creativity, and it has everything to do with best practices that are being used throughout the state of Iowa. So I wanted to start off with asking for discussion. And the reason I'm asking for discussion from counselors is because this is a policy question. Our police department gets guidance on the vision of what the police department is based on what we say. And I figured let's start here and find out where we have any concerns or comments or points of consideration.
Well, I move to open the discussion.
Thank you. All right, and okay, so let's start off with the definitions. Does anybody have any issues actually with the statement of intent? I thought the statement of intent is fair. It has nothing to do with stopping policing. All it says is we do our police work without profiling. Does anybody have any objections to the statement of intent?
I don't know if we need to go through this line by line tonight. I
No, it's
would
not
just,
line by line. It's just section to discuss.
my request would
openly.
be that Nate and Nick have a month to digest this and go through it themselves in committee and see if they have any concerns, and then we come back to it next month.
Well, I think it's a council issue, not just the police department.
Well, it's their committee and they didn't write it themselves, so I think as a professional courtesy, I would like to give them some time with it.
Yeah, I didn't see it any earlier than anybody else. I was actually in northern Minnesota on Saturday, so I didn't see it probably until after some of you. Yeah, I think the actual work needs to be done on this. I don't know that anybody's going to disagree on the policy points. I think everybody would agree on the policy points. I think the actual hard work on this is looking at our current policies, how we would implement them, looking at like training, for example. I don't know if the council's aware that the UHPD was at an implicit bias training this week. So the question is, if we're telling them they need to go to, are we telling them they need to go to different training? I mean, there's just a lot of details that the actual work that needs to be done is still yet to be done. So I think I would agree with the idea of looking at this, over the next month.
Nick, I think that the overall intent is more global. I think, approving it applies to everything, actually, that we do as a city. So then you can take this to the police department and modify it or use it to develop your specific police policy, because the council is not going to, help you mix that dough. That is sort of up to you and the police to work out how you want to put that in your police vision project.
Right. And one other thing to consider is this ordinance takes 3 readings. Reading it into tonight's ordinance provides a general broad schematic. It's no mistake that this ordinance doesn't micromanage. It gives the discretion to build policies and procedures that have to come back to council from the department level for approval. Absolutely no micromanaging. It gives you that discretion. Moreover, the way I look at it is if we do the first reading tonight, we have August and September, and the timeline under the ordinance has September, October, and November to start implementing your policies, but you've already had 180 days by then to start looking into this. Because
I don't want to interrupt you, but I don't see that it's written for a vote tonight. It's not written for consideration.
Well, neither was the salary raises for our clerk and our treasurer. So you're taking the same format.
I'm
could motion
checking
a
with
vote.
Abby
Let's
here,
ask for legal. Let's ask for a legal
and
opinion.
I'm showing it how it's written here, and I don't see how that's. I think it's a discussion item at most, but not a consideration.
Do you know if Steve was given this beforehand? Has he reviewed?
Steve has not given this beforehand and has not had the opportunity to review it.
There's not much for Steve to do.
No, there's
I can speak to the fact that there's, in the training section alone, there's Iowa code that probably should be cited in there because there's Iowa code that specifically references the training that we have to receive.
But this is ACLU, though. This is ACLU language.
There's still state code that is specific to the training, so we have to meet those standards beyond whatever the city does. We have to meet the state standards to keep our certification to be officers. So
and that doesn't.
That would need to be referenced in there as part of the training because we have to first meet that before
well,
we can go on anything else.
At your department manual level, you're right. You could do all of that. This ordinance doesn't micromanage any other aspects that you are responsible for under Iowa code.
That was a question, I guess, for Abby. Does that need to be, the Iowa code need to be stated in there?
No, it's bigger than that.
Steve would prefer and advise that he has been given the opportunity to review to ensure that it does comport with even the ordinances and the policy of the city as well as Iowa code. Not saying it doesn't, but
no,
I think he
so
would
long
prefer
as
the ability to do so before legal gives any
Well,
sort
I would
of
think
agreement
staff
with it.
should review it.
CLE is bigger than.
And, you know, it could be written as first consideration for August.
Well, here's the other thing. If you have any changes or reservations, we have done this a number of times where at the second and third reading, we change language. That has happened. And it has happened for very complicated subjects and very easy subjects. So I just don't see this any differently.
But then it becomes a first reading.
That's fine.
Yeah, if you change language. While we're, I mean, we were starting to get feedback. I don't know if anybody's here is interested in it. Do you want, I don't know if I put you on the spot, do you want to talk at all about data collection, the class that you took, if you're aware of any other classes that you guys might want funding to be able to take, you know, the cost, if you know of the other classes, if you'd be taking other classes, anything you would want to say while we consider this over the next month?
Yeah.
Also, since the public might be interested to know.
Absolutely. As far as the training, Officer Johnson and I, so as many people know, us being short-staffed right now, we are at 3 officers that are currently working full-time. 2 of the 3 of us were at the implicit bias training last night with Iowa City and University of Iowa officers. I had another meeting today with the Director of Public Safety at the University of Iowa. The instructor last night is actually one of the officers there. And we will be, as UHPD, will be attending their training with them as they do the implicit bias training going forward. For our officers that were not able to attend last night, the 2 that are still in the hiring process, and then the one that was had other things that he needed to be at, he offered a special time that they would present that training to those officers outside of the training that the rest of us will do with them ongoing. As far as our data collection, I am currently working with someone who is a lot better with Microsoft Excel than I am, and using statistical analysis in those things.
Sure.
So we already collect data. It's not as good as it could be. I'll be the first to admit that. But the data that we currently have, the council public is interested. Over the last couple days, it's time consuming at this point because, like I said, Excel from prior chiefs was not set up to. It's set up to collect the data. It's unfortunately at this point it's not set up to give those numbers. So I have to do everything by hand. Hopefully going forward, I know going forward we have the process in place to get that to the point where we can publish that data very easily, and it'll be in the system where once we put it in, I can tell it a range and we can have that. So the manual work that I have done over the last couple days, I can say that there is no current issue over the last 7 months, and looking at over 1,000 traffic stops, the breakdown of minority citations versus warnings to Caucasian citation versus warnings, the percentages are almost identical, within 0.5% for citations, and within the minority group was about 0.6%, just over 0.5% more likely to receive a warning than a citation compared to Caucasians. So there isn't, our stops in general are about 71 to 29% Caucasian to minority, and with the demographics of Johnson County being 80-20 roughly, and Iowa City 76 to 24%, those numbers are on par, if not a lot better than the numbers that Iowa City initially started with. So we are, in my opinion, already doing a great job. Like I said, I'd like to track more of the data just in general.
So you don't object to some of the additional elements that would be tracked by this?
No, there's some of the elements, like I said, that we're already that I'm already incorporating.
Thank you.
But
Okay, good.
there are parts of the ordinance that I would like to discuss in further detail as to what your intentions are, and just
What sections are those?
specifically on my issue on one of the providing the form. I can tell you that from a procedural standpoint, I will not ever advise the officers to be handing out anything other than the citation or warning on the side of the road on traffic stop. I know it says when it's practical to hand that out, but I can tell you that on the side of the road in traffic there's never a practical time.
That is what the ordinance writes. The ordinance
So,
doesn't, the ordinance
It
says
doesn't
when
clarify what practical is my point. If we're going to provide clear direction for the police department, I want it to be
Nope, I
clear
understand.
direction, not, I don't want that board to come back and wonder why these forms aren't being given out. I know Iowa City has a website, or part of their website, where that form is located and spells it all out, where they can file the complaint in one of three ways. I would ask that, I know Chief Matherly has worked with the NAACP here locally, and they've done a lot of work together to build that. And I would just ask that we not try to reinvent the wheel and not look necessarily for outside. We can look for guidance from outside, but I think the final product needs to be specific to our area and what we're seeing. Because what's happening in Texas or St. Louis or insert any town USA here is not necessarily what we're seeing here locally. And just from my meetings with Kevin and the NAACP and having those discussions, we want to move forward, but we want to move forward in a manner that is specific to our area and address the concerns here, not the concerns that are happening elsewhere in the country.
Yeah, no, I agree. We should tailor it to our community, and that's
Absolutely.
exactly what happened. That's why I reached out to community-driven organizations like the ACLU Iowa. I didn't reach out to ACLU National. I asked about this. I started getting informed, and I asked for what many of these organizations have, and that is a model language. And this is based off of a model. So I'm glad to hear that you are supportive. You do have some procedural process items that you do want to explore, and I'm glad that you acknowledge that that is the purview of council to take up those policy issues like the notice. So. Okay, so tell us a little bit more about, data collection,
So
analysis.
can you three work through this over the next month and we can come back and vote on this in August? Is there council consensus for doing that?
I'd like a first reading in August, which means that we probably should have, is there any way we can have a markup of this, actually, no, let's discuss it in August, ready to vote on it in August before school starts. I'd like to
Sounds
have
good.
this before school and football game days start.
Is that agreeable with council?
The timeline.
Rest of council, is that agreeable with you, Dottie?
Yeah, I think that this is an overview of a global matter, and I think that the police department and Nate can work out the details, because you're going to have to live with it, and then bring that back to the committee next month. But I agree that we need a first reading then for sure.
Tonight?
Well, if we could tonight, but I don't know if I would agree to, but as long as we can make changes in second and third reading.
So by a show of hands, if this was a perfect, a perfect ordinance, how many of you would be ready to vote for it in favor of adoption if it were perfect?
I'm interested in the concept, but I'm not going to comment on what perfect is.
Lisa?
I can't hear what she said because she mumbled into the mic.
I'm interested in the concept. I'm not going to make speculation on what perfect is.
You mean the police detail?
Tracking this type of data.
So then what you're saying is it is the policy, police policy, that you were working on as a part of the vision.
Right. So my other question, so Lisa, we know, Nick, where do you stand on this? Support or no support? And I'll ask you the same question, Dottie, next, because I don't know where you stand.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm very interested in implicit bias. I was involved with Mark W. Bennett, United States District Court judge for the Northern District of Iowa, who wrote a really interesting article on implicit bias, I think in 2010, and did some research on it back then. I think that it's not a policy issue right now. We're not in favor of, racial profiling now. It's something that we've already been working on. and so it's just a matter of what this actually means. That's the issue. And so yeah, of course, I think everybody, like I said at the beginning, everybody's in favor of the general idea. It's just where the rubber meets the road and what it actually means
Right.
for the UHPD.
So Dottie, where do you stand on this ordinance? Because I don't know what your position is.
Well, I think I've said I am supportive of the concept. I think that the detail has to come from the department, the
Okay.
police department.
The other last question that I'd like to ask is one of the details that's critical to this ordinance that you have heard from the public that submitted comments tonight is the review board. That's the mechanism they made reference to. That's the review board that reviews complaints, that processes the complaints, and adds the teeth to this ordinance. So what is the position? I know you're all interested in the concept, but this concept is packaged on having a component that is integral to the foundation. If this foundation does not include a board of review, it falls apart. All it is a nice to have statement with no monitoring. There's no cohesiveness around it, nothing. It needs a review board. My position is I wasn't familiar with the review board, but once I found out that that is the integral part, and this is coming from the law professor who submitted the comment today, this evening, it's an important mechanism for accountability. And that was also referenced in the comment from the gentleman who was a pedestrian and bicyclist. So what are your initial thoughts on that? Especially from the chief, because you're included in that review board as a member of the review board. Did you have any comments or concerns about that?
No, I think it's the review board in general is consistent with. Again, I would ask that we look to other localities within Iowa. Iowa City being a great example of how they run their review board, and just again not try to reinvent the wheel or do something different here. If we run it in the same manner. From my experience and conversations with people around that, they're happy with how that's functioning. So
Okay. All right. So given those preliminary assurance, consensus from this council that we will have a work product available for voting on August, then, okay, good luck on getting this together. Thank you. I will be sending you the Word document so that if you guys want to mark it up, that way we see where changes occurred.
And review by the city attorney.
yeah.
Zero funding.
Yes, the next is a policy regarding fair housing policy statement by our city. We just went over a fairness policy in policing and no profiling. So fair housing policy, this was also circulated on Saturday for your review. And it simply reflects a standard that is prevailing law, which could change in the near term with the composition of a new Supreme Court being recomposed as early as this fall. So because we can do better than federal law, because we can do better than state law, I think it is a good commitment on our part to have a policy statement that simply says that if we have cash as a city, taxpayer dollars, that we will not invest them in a way that discriminates with respect to housing programs or housing practices in our city. And it's a simple statement that tracks federal HUD guidelines from the Obama administration, and I hope that you will support it. So I'm opening up the item for discussion. Is there a second?
Are ordinances a housing practice?
I'm sorry?
Are ordinances a housing practice?
Mm-hmm. It could be. I don't know. Do we have any that are housing?
Well, we
This
have a
wasn't
rental.
sent to Steve Ballard either, was it?
Yeah, I have some.
No, but this is to invest. We're
Again,
not
I support the
investing.
concept, but the way it's worded is, I don't know. I would like legal review on this.
But we're not funding and we are not subsidizing the rental program.
I mean,
That's the other way around. The rental program is subsidizing the cost of the rental inspector.
we fund
Yeah.
creation
The
of
city.
ordinances, which are a housing practice.
No, but
I mean,
These meetings end up getting really late often, and if this is something we're going to have the city attorney look at, I would just like to do that maybe and get the feedback before we spend a lot of time spinning wheels. That's just my thought. I don't know what others think.
Well, just
yeah, I mean, so again, like the concept is interesting. I'm just worried about the execution here, and so I would like
I find the ordinance is more than just interesting. It's relevant. It is consistent with this community, which is very progressive. And because we're a progressive community of highly well-educated, well-informed individuals, I think I've got to tell you that the plain language of this policy is the city may not fund.
What
or
is this?
subsidize.
Is this
Can
a
you give some
resolution?
examples of where this would be, where this would come into play?
What is a policy? How does this even get? Like, how does this even affect
That's what I was wondering.
What is a policy?
Yeah.
There's no resolution number here. This isn't an ordinance. Like, I just don't know
it's a
what this
resolution.
is.
It's just a resolution adopting a policy that says we, as a matter of public policy, will not design programs that we invest in. So I don't see us investing in Mr. Sheminsky's house or his rentals. Do we subsidize you in any way? Do we give you tax breaks anywhere? Okay.
What is an example,
though?
though?
Relate to the affordable housing program.
I don't know. There isn't one on the table right now.
Well, highly regressive makes our city go from affordable housing to government subsidies exclusively for the well-off. Do those words ring a bell?
Where are they? Where are they in this policy?
They're not in the policy.
That's right. So I'm not worrying about what's not on this policy. I only control what I have here.
But what is an example of where you think this would come into play?
I don't know. Whatever. We are now in a position where we can be principle-minded as a community. We can either work off of principle and let that be our North Star in guiding us as we make more and more decisions that make our city a much more sophisticated city to live in. But I can't be responsible for any other language other than what I put before you for consideration. So I am willing to only do the following, that is to run it through legal to answer the simple question as to what is the city funding or subsidizing right now as an example to get you that, because it seems to me like you want
and
a
again,
concrete example.
What is a policy to us? And we don't have a policy manual. Are you asking for this to go into a manual? Like, I'm just confused as to how this would actually impact anything we do. And so if we're going to take this up, which I think is a fine thing to take up, like let's make it.
It could be kind of a guide.
Run it through legal and have this be a proper resolution or something.
It could be a guide to a development of a policy, in terms of the future, because we now have 2 houses, which we're going to have to shepherd and manage or do whatever they need to have done. And
so if we want to hold on to this and roll it into, the development of those things, I think that's fine. I just don't totally understand what we're looking at here.
So we're going to have staff review some of this.
Right. I'll have.
And then we'll bring it up in August.
We'll bring it up in August for adoption, because I think as this city is getting more and more sophisticated in what we're doing, what we're offering, who knows what the future will bring. So we need to have a North Star that says we don't do profiling in our city and we treat people fairly.
Don't be sure when they reject the possibility for free money in a park. So don't be sure they're progressive.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll take...
So anyway, I want to know from Steve, like, what's the best way to incorporate this into city code? Like, I just don't know, what does a policy mean? How are we held to it? What happens if we violate the policy?
Maybe this should be an ordinance. Great suggestion. All right, so I will carry both of these over to Steve Ballard.
Okay, thank you. We'll go now to, we'll go back to the first page and the mayor's report. And first, I want to announce if anyone is interested in the zoning commission appointment to please contact me. And then for third consideration is before you of ordinance number 227 prohibiting use of vapors, electronic cigarettes in public places where tobacco already may not be smoked pursuant to Iowa's Smoke-Free Air Act.
Motion adoption.
Second.
Motion by Virginia, second by Nick. Is there discussion? Roll call vote. Thank you.
Moore,
Aye.
Maher,
Aye.
Casada,
Aye.
Herbold,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
carried.
Okay, and then I wanted to discuss developing a visioning plan for the municipal park and green space with the Swisher Tract. This was discussed somewhat when council did the bond, the $555,000 that it was suggested that they have an approach to visioning, a professional approach. And Steve Ford had contacted me early on, and so had Sandy Stiles from MMS. And Steve Ford had contacted me very early, and that's where I came up with a quote to council. I pressed him and suggested what would approach to visioning, what would a plan cost. And I gave this handout to everyone, and I have a PDF file of it, and I'm sorry I didn't get back to send that, but I have the hard copy. And he said it depends on the scope. So I wanted to put something in front of you this month so you can at least get an idea of, and I'm going to read some of these things because, first he says approach to visioning on his page 3, obtain aerial mapping, review historic mapping, review landforms and grades, conduct site analysis, conduct woodland streams, wetland professionals for critical sensitivities, develop core task force of citizens who will be the local representatives for a consultant during all phase of visioning process, develop the vision considering, and he talks about accessibility, erosions, whether you want to walk in or a drive-in park, a trail, path, site, what kind of amenities on the site, woodlands management, land use options, all of those. This would involve schedule, prepare, and hold community input meetings and refine vision, develop documentation with recommendations, and then present to council. And it just gives you a little bit of, I met with him, and Virginia was able to come, and at the last minute, Lisa joined, and we heard him talk about, and it talks about some of his experiences in here, and I'm not saying he's the only person. I did talk with Sandy Stiles of MMS, and she said they go through it. She can also do a visioning process, a plan, and I can meet with her in early August, and Stephen Ford would like to come before the council and speak, and I'm just trying to get some steps to put in front of the council on what direction they want to go with this and what it means. Apparently, you have to go through a visioning plan to get grant money, because the grants are going to say, well, let's see your plan. Let's see your vision, and make sure you go through a process. And I think he can speak more about it. I just wanted to not, just put this in front of you so that you can review it and look at it, and we'll put it on the website. And then he could come to the August 14th meeting and talk if you want, or and I could also meet with another person who does this. There's many people in the community. I had his name before. I had worked on a small little project with him with one of my friends, and then he had worked with Confluence, and he'd work on a project with Josiah. Josiah mentioned his name. Now he's by himself, and I'm just putting this in front of just to start the steps.
I'd also like an input from our insurance carrier what
Oh,
this
yeah.
might be in terms of our
Liability.
liability exposure if we do anything. Because I think it should remain virgin. But I think that could be a very heavy cost.
Well, I know a lot of people are excited about, as Steph was just here tonight, she said she wondered, and I just wanted to put this out there. Does anybody
Louise,
have
are there particular grants that you know about?
Yes, I'm aware of them. One of them
Like
is
the
the
REAP?
REAP
Okay.
program.
And that
because
requires visioning?
It requires an itemization of what we need, which means that Mark Vitash's initial preliminary, whatever he's going to do for us won't be sufficient. Because we need to have, well, also the city needs to have matching funding to demonstrate skin in the game or commitment. My only concern globally is we need to compete this out to get the better ideas to come forward. I'd like to make sure that we have an RFP. We are saturated, and you probably know this a lot more than I do, Virginia, with a lot of folks that do landscaping design and park design in Johnson County. That means we're pretty fortunate. And I think having perhaps a group of these folks coming in with their portfolio of what they've done or could do would benefit everyone, because I am the first to admit I don't know the first thing about park development, but I do know that there are federal laws for ADA that apply to it. And we have to be
accessibility?
careful.
That's right.
And so that's the last thing I want to do is design a park that doesn't take into account ADA considerations. I think that would just be a big miss on our part. And so if anybody has any reservations about that, let's have an open process for an RFP. I happen to have various samples of RFPs because I knew we were going to be hitting this speed bump. And
Do you have them tonight?
not with me, they're in my file.
I see.
I'm happy to work with you on putting them together, and let's paper the world and say, we've got 11 acres, what do you all think is possible? And the second consideration that I'm really worried about is we have some 100-year-old trees deep in that forest that need some attention because we've got vines and weeds that are apparently choking them out and essentially killing off those trees. So I think, Virginia, I know you're an arborist. It would be meaningful to help what our policy position is in saving historical 100-year-old oak trees that are native to Iowa.
Yeah, I think we need to figure out what we're interested in here. Are we interested in improving the quality of the woodlands? Or are we interested in leaving it alone? You know, there's downsides to improving the quality of the woodlands. It's not a slam dunk thing necessarily.
And that's why I think
we need to really, as a group, decide on the scope that we're interested in here. I think, personally, I'm interested in a hiking trail, and that's it. And I hear that idea reflected from a lot of people thus far that I've talked to. I also hear from people that want more than that.
That's what I hear. And my concern is we need to balance the interests.
And I think, the whole portion, to me, the whole point of buying that property was to preserve the woodlands. And so any development we do of the area as a park compromises the woodlands.
That's what I've heard, that they want to remain
Well, why was the
intact.
bond initiative voted at 73% passage for acquisition, development, and maintenance?
75.
75%. I mean, that's the language that I'm hearing from folks who don't live close to the woodlands and who want to see them. I know there's interest from young families who are in our community right now who can't wait to go walking, to take their kids to playscapes, not necessarily playgrounds like the ones you find on Tower Court Park, but natural playscapes that apparently are all the rage in big park land operations that are naturalistically oriented. So my concern is that I am not well versed on parkland development, and I want to have professional consultants come in and help us. It's money well spent.
So I had another idea of how to start sort of like wrapping our head and the community's head around this, let's call it an opportunity. And that is that this is not like the first woodland that would be managed as a park in Iowa City. This is something that happens all over the place. There's Ryerson Woods, there's Hickory Hill, that are, much, much, much bigger in size, but sort of similar in concept. So, I mean, an idea that I had, and feel free to say, no, that's a terrible idea. What if we tried to organize a speaker series here at the community center for the fall and invite some of these groups that do this type of work already to come in, tell us about their park, tell us what they do to maintain it, tell us what the costs are, and tell us how it's used.
I have a question about like Hickory Hill
Mm-hmm.
Park over there. Do you know anything about the beginning of that and how that wasn't a woodland like we have here, though, was it? I mean, it was more just.
Steve worked on it.
It was a
and it's in
development.
here.
Yeah, it was a development.
It's 220 some acres.
Was it?
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, I don't know how.
But I also
it started,
don't think
but
it was as.
It is a woodland. I mean, not the whole thing. There's also sections of prairie. There's some play areas and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not like they planted the trees and that's how
No.
it grew into a forest. I mean, it was a woodland like what we have here.
Yeah, like as bad as this, because this is really virgin.
I don't know what you mean by that. It's not a virgin stand. It's roughly 80 years old. If you look at aerial photographs from the 1930s, it was a field.
Oh, it was. This was.
Uh-huh.
With some oak.
And it's got a lot of great species in there. It's got a lot of oak and hickory. I don't know how interested you guys are in talking about this right now. Oak hickory is a fire ecosystem. This is an option we could get into, is we could start doing, at some point, once we get the quality up to an acceptable level that it's not going to rage into a forest fire, we could do controlled burns, and that's a very appropriate way of managing that type of woodland. But this is where I just don't think that we or the community really has enough education to be thinking about this kind of thing. And this is where I think maybe we could benefit from a community education series.
And this is something that I would encourage, it's so big and there is so much diverse opinion.
Right.
That I would want because I've talked to a number of people that, are interested in maintaining it the way it is, and not.
Yeah, and this is what I'm saying. Like improving the quality of the forest stand is not.
Yeah.
It's not, a 100% positive thing. There are other things that happen when you do that. You get, you draw a lot more people into there because you can actually walk through it now. Whereas right now it's fairly forbidding because there's so much undergrowth.
And that's why we need a professional consultant. Even if you were to hire and do these educational mini-series, you still don't get away from the fact that
I'm not saying that this would replace it, but I just, so I guess I'm sorry I'm derailing the conversation. Is there interest in doing some community education this fall?
Well, I think the professional could
guide community information
I
sessions.
want a professional, as Sylvia
We're about
said,
to invest a substantial
to
amount of
guide
money.
and say, this is some part
so
of
then
our
we need
scope.
some.
We want
So then we need some
educational
proposals from a couple of different people.
Right, and
with
we
costs.
want an educational series included if that's what the council decides.
Okay.
But instead of just us bringing them in and trying to direct it, I think we need a professional.
Right, we need a professional who comes and listens to these educational things, to listen to what the public has to say.
So do we want to have a separate night that's open to the public where we hear proposals from various professionals?
Oh, I think it should be
meeting.
Right.
I think it should be
I think a special meeting.
I think it should be something like we had a year ago for the football review over in the
athletic
club. University
Athletic
Park. It should be big. I mean, we need not just a special meeting here, but really a
And we probably need like two, because we have folks that can't make weekday meetings, and we have to be sensitive to that. We need to get as much public input, because my biggest concern is that I operate in a bubble sometimes, and that's why I challenge myself to constantly be knocking on doors late in the evenings, sometimes waking up babies as I do so. But, as Dottie sometimes says, stop scaring people. It's time to go home. But the point is, we need to get a diverse opinion set from different quadrants of the city. You had Stephanie Gom from a completely different perspective tonight. and you have me from a different perspective. I appreciate the perspective that Nick and Virginia and Lisa have, but we have to be able to compromise and move to the middle, because time is happening, and I think I had somebody mention that they didn't want the park to even start moving 10 years later. They're worried that this council can't get much productivity out of our council meetings, and that we're not going to be doing anything purposely.
So do we want to have a special meeting where we have various consultants come give us their proposal?
Yeah.
And do we want to have any sort of, like, how do you want to then collect feedback from the public on that?
And I'd like to know how
Just how, I mean, it can be as easy as just having everyone fill out a.
I'd like to know how the neighbors responded to, like, Willow Creek and Hickory Hill. And I'm sure the people that live right near, have a different opinion than if you live, a mile away.
Mm-hmm. And anyway, when we have people come give proposals, do we want to have, I don't know, are there any limitations we want to set or parameters we want to set from the outset saying we're interested in trails?
Yeah.
We're not interested in a parking lot, something like that.
I think, how about if every counselor submits a list of items, of bullet points?
Okay.
You like that, Nick? And
of what you
bullet
Of
point
interest area.
list?
Mhm.
You like that, Lisa? Or if people who want to make a list.
Right, because otherwise, we Louise, in speaking to these folks, what have they recommended? Big scope, big broad, and then scope it down. We don't know what this will look like until we start hearing opinions and proposals. So I think we're prematurely trying to determine something we just can't.
I'd like to get the professionals involved somewhat early, so they can be maybe listening with their more educated ear to what the community members are saying. I don't know if certain professionals are going to say, well, I'm not going to handle it if it's, involves this or that. Possibly.
Mm-hmm.
But this is kind of, it's kind of like a resume for this sort of position is kind of what
That's
I'm
what
looking
I
for.
see it
to
as.
understand what have you done,
Mm-hmm.
do you have experience, and what is it going to cost? So I think
What's your philosophy in design? What have you accomplished? What's been your most challenging project? What's been your easiest one? What's your gem?
Okay, so what's the plan?
So I would like to get, I think ideally we'd have a good method to get more individuals in this, that are landscape architects or who have experience doing this.
Louise, do you want to put together a list for the August meeting? Is that
That's kind of what I was thinking.
the appropriate way to go?
Well, how about if we modify that? Because we know we want an RFP. Is that the direction? I would support Nick's comment that the RFP is the right approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by August, we should have a listing of who's submitted back, maybe, for report back. But Louise, I think that RFP needs to go out if you can this week. Today's Tuesday, or maybe next week or Saturday.
I'm
you're out of time.
And I think we need a couple
vacation. I guess I
people.
could do it on my vacation.
I would be happy to help you. I've got the documents. It's just a matter of identifying a pool of individuals, posting it onto our website so that it is open to the public.
And I think I would like to choose two people, too. I'd like two different opinions.
Yeah, the short list. Yeah, absolutely.
After we pick not pick one person, but pick a couple.
Yeah, bring them in.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting at all that Louise and myself eliminate people from the list. I'm just saying we start the process. We do the administrative back office work to get this moving.
Okay.
Okay, let's get it moving in the next week or two, and then we'll have something for the August 14th meeting.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Let's, where are we? You got the legal report, and we got that, and that's going to be covered under other agenda items. So then we'll go to Chris Anderson's clerk report. How about that?
How about that? I sent out my clerk report as well as the updated building permit spreadsheet. I have 2 items for consideration in my section. The first being Maggie's Farm Pizza liquor license renewal. Everything has checked out, and so I would appreciate.
Motion, we
I
renew
second.
their license?
Okay, a motion by, was it Virginia?
Mhm.
or
Yep.
Lisa?
No,
Virginia,
Virginia.
and a second by Sylvia. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, motion carried for liquor license renewal.
Thank you. The second item, if you all remember at the May regular meeting, you asked me to obtain a list of names for potential CPA firms to conduct the city audit. And I have these up, or I will have them up on the screen in a second here.
This is a big list. Thanks for putting this together.
Well, I can't take all credit. That would be Steve Poole, so thank you, Steve. There are 10 of them. Let me unfreeze this so I can scroll down. Hard to talk and do the AV at the same time.
Motion that you proceed with this list?
I second. And I also want to thank this, the council for agreeing to open up the short list, because the list we had been operating with was stale. It was several years old, and there's nothing worse than hanging around with stale processes. So thank you
Okay.
for being open-minded.
So that was a motion by Virginia and second by Sylvia.
What was the motion? I didn't hear.
It's the motion to contact for an
Those 10.
RFP. So we're going to do an RFP with them.
Okay, all of them.
Yeah, the 10.
So that was Virginia first, second,
Mhm.
Sylvia.
Sylvia. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
So once I start to receive responses, or hopefully receive responses, I will scan those and send to the council as I receive them.
Actually, would you rather do a table instead? That way you tell us who responded and just capture some global information?
I can do whatever the council directs me to. I was under the assumption you'd want to see everything that they responded with, but if you all prefer a table, I can do that.
What would you expect? Because I'm expecting that they would respond back saying, yes, I'm not interested. If they say no, you put a no next to their name. At least we know who they are on the table. If they say yes, you also know their pricing and whether they're amenable to your schedule, which is what you have conditioned part of this audit on, right?
Right. So normally when we do the examination, given that I'm currently in year-end closing, Lori will have property management issues starting in August. I'm looking at Lori now, August now. We tend to do it later. I believe the last time that we did the examination, we did the field work at the end of October, and we had a report that we discussed in December.
Mhm.
So, and the deadline is March of next year, so we have
Right.
plenty of time to get it done.
Right. Okay.
So again, I'll do whatever the council directs me to do.
Whatever's easiest. I know you have a lot of duties already.
Oh, I have nothing. No, I'm fine. A table's easy. That's not a problem.
But I think we should get, the guess is we should get all the information,
Okay.
too. Don't you think? I
That
would like
makes
to
sense.
see it.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Okay.
Not a problem.
And
Have you had any feedback from the rental permit business?
I don't know
Lots.
if you want to talk about that or you.
Sure.
Okay.
Get to that one.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I guess you don't have to be here. I mean, Josiah, just leave. I can't think of everything. Did you have something? Well, you had
No.
your engineer's report. You had a report. That's why he's here. Okay, well,
I'm done.
we
Go
gotta,
ahead.
well, we were interrupting, Virginia. You were gonna just kind of review that
Let's do it
quickly?
in my section.
Okay, we'll do it in your section. Okay, your engineer report. I don't know, I read it. It's
Right.
like,
It's not a big deal. I apologize again for not sending it out. I assume, did you receive it all?
Yeah.
Today?
Yeah.
It didn't go out yesterday. Okay. Well, apologize. I guess the Melrose Avenue fiber optic project, I noted it's been awarded by Iowa City. It should be starting later this month, so you'll see that work. I'll join them in their pre-construction meeting to find out what's going on and make make them aware of the issues that are important to us. So when they're doing that work in the city, they're aware of that. I don't have any other particular items to request feedback unless there's questions about.
Thank you, Josiah. You can
Right.
go now.
Just a quick question on the bus statistics. Any further information on that?
No.
Okay.
I'm not getting anything back.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Oh, Josiah, you might mention also the Sunset bus shelter issue, and when we're finally.
Yeah, so I did inquire with them. I did get.
Yeah, I mean, the
back that
council doesn't know, though.
They have ordered they have
Finally.
placed their order now for their shelters. But that means that they're, 2-3 months out.
A year late,
getting
but
them
yeah.
installed.
2-3 months out. Oh, okay. And then you had a question, Lisa.
Well, about sidewalks, because what I recall from when you inspected our area, the things that you were looking for, do you look for anything like sidewalks that are perpetually covered in gravel or mud or underwater when there's any rain, or are you just really looking for holes and cracks and
Holes, cracks, lips, trip hazards, or potentially areas that dew pond and ice.
so things
Trip
like
hazards all over town.
vegetation is growing across or growing in the cracks? That's something else. That's not. Is that a concern to anyone?
Sometimes, I mean, if that separation's big enough. So we have this list of criteria. I guess let me just back up. So we started this sidewalk inspection process 4 years ago, and then got a schedule to do the 3 quadrants of the city on a continuing basis. We're now into that second round of background. So there is a sheet. There's a set of criteria, so everybody is aware that it's fairly reviewed, and if we say you have a problem and you need to fix it, it's based on something. So that's a long-winded way of getting back to your question about if there's grass growing through it. It's not necessarily an issue unless that gap is getting wide enough to meet that criteria.
Any other questions for Josiah? Okay, thank you, Josiah. I'm sorry I missed that. So we have the treasurer's report and payment of bills. The warrants were sent by Lori, and then she added 2 more this afternoon. Did everyone get to look at them?
Mm-hmm.
Are there any objections to paying the bills?
No.
Hearing none, the bills will be paid by unanimous consent. And then I guess now Virginia can talk about everything. You sent a committee report.
Yeah, I have 2 ordinance changes to propose tonight, and I don't necessarily want to vote on either of these, but I wanted to get a little feedback on what you thought. Ordinance 191 is the parkland dedication ordinance, and so we ran into a problem with this a couple of months ago when the Marriott Hotel was built, because at the time we wrote it, only referenced residential space. And so I wanted to know if there's support from council to include language in this ordinance that refers to non-residential space, so that if anything besides housing gets built, there is some mechanism to require a parkland set aside. And this, at this point refers to increases in density. So if you think, okay, when is this ever going to happen? Maybe someday, 25 years down the line, the Stella building gets torn down and replaced with a 5-story building. That would be something that would trigger this. So it's mostly going to be redevelopment of existing space. So,
Well, I have a question about that. If an individual that owned a property wanted to make improvements, would that trigger this?
no, if you're adding on to your own existing house, that would not be an increase in density. That would not be an addition of any additional housing units.
And changing the interior?
And no, I can't imagine how it would. And so Steve, I see, put in here sort of like a buffer period of, or a buffer zone of 2,500 square feet that say the Stella building gets torn down and replaced by a building that only increases the total square footage of the building by 2,500 square feet, they would be exempt. So, maybe that's the first area of discussion. Do you like that exemption? Do you think it should be higher? Do you think it should not exist? Or maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Do you think this is necessary at all?
I think I've said this several times during the Marriott Hotel discussion, and that is, I appreciate that we have an ordinance for green space, but we should have done better research by our legal team in order to get the best and brightest ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And Austin, Texas has an awesome ordinance on green space that hit the very issue that many residents wanted accountability on, but our ordinance fell short of. So I'm going to request that I appreciate that this 125 buffer is being looked at, but I want the Austin, Texas ordinance, which I sent to MPOJC for their own reference because they were also looking into comparable ordinances, and I also sent it to Steve Ballard.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want us to waste all of this valuable $250 of legal time only to come down short because somebody else already had a good idea and we just happened to overlook it. So Austin, Texas, I'll send up, I don't even know if I had to look for that email, but Steve should have it. It was sent to him along with MPOJC for their future reference. I mean, they're a big
Okay, so your preference would be to scrap what we have here.
Scrap what we have and let's go see what Austin,
ordinance.
Texas did, because Austin, Texas contemplated hotels. They contemplated other non-commercial. I mean,
yeah, the other idea I had was parking lots. Do we want, if somebody, if a parking lot is installed, do we want to write that
Austin,
in there?
Texas already hit on that.
Okay, so
I think we're coming short with thinking this small.
Is that the consensus of council?
Paul wants to speak.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't heard from Paul tonight. Let's hear from Paul.
Paul Moore, 1000 Melrose Avenue. I guess I have not read this ordinance, what you're considering, but I was wondering what effect that's going to have on the university if they wanted somebody to build a hotel here.
Well, that's a question. I mean, first off, they would be able to be exempted from it if they choose because they're a state entity and they don't have to follow our local ordinances.
No.
So they would be able to take themselves out of it if they choose. Now, I would hope they would not want to do that, but...
So if I wanted to tear my house down at 116 Gulfview and have that rezoned for a parking lot because everybody complains about the parking in the business district, what am I going to have to give you? I don't have anything to give you as far as space or money. And when the voters voted to have money for Swisher Estate, you didn't even take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. And now you're putting a burden on commercial property that's going to stymie anything I'm going to do. And one thing you got to address, you're taking away my handicap parking with this vision plan. What am I going to do? I don't, only handicap spots that I can put in that north parking lot are clear at the bottom of the hill due to the terrain. And so we got some headbutting coming on between you and the council and myself. And I don't understand why that is so important for commercial unless there's something going on that I don't know about. There's no commercial space left. And I'm not so interested in tearing the building down and having a 5-story building there. That contributes to the problem. But how are we going to resolve it? I spent over $1,000 with Josiah trying to design a parking lot for that vacant lot. He came up with 3 concepts. Every one of them got worse than the other one. There was, due to the green space, they got to provide the setback and all that. I couldn't gain anything other than frustration. And so what are you going to do about parking when you're taking away my parking. You took it away in 2010. Due to the vision, I put in a parking lot, kissed away $100,000. It takes a while to generate that when nobody's plugging the nickel in. So why in the world are you passing something like this? As I said the other night, you got a lot more important things to deal with, it seems like. All you do is banter back and forth every council meeting. I was spared the last one because I was out of town. But this is getting old.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. So, you're going to look at.
Sure. If that's council direction, that's what I'll do. So the next one I had is ordinance 233. Again, I'm not sure we're ready to consider this yet. We discussed at the last meeting prohibiting short-term rentals, also known as Airbnbs. My idea here is that ultimately I think this probably is something that we want to allow in a limited fashion, but I'm just not hearing from anybody who wants them. Since the last meeting where we discussed this, I've only gotten feedback from people saying that I don't want this. I heard from a couple of rental property owners who were somewhat interested, but I think that's really not the direction that we want to go. So my proposal here is that since we have a rental cap ban, we are going to have some people in town that want rental permits that cannot, a rental permit cap. We are going to have some people in town that want rental permits that are not able to get them. And we do not, at this time, specifically allow Airbnbs, but neither do we prohibit them. And there have been some operating. And they're not inspected. The buildings are not inspected for safety, and they're not turning in any hotel motel tax. So I think it's prudent to prohibit them for now. And if folks decide they want them, they can come to council and say, this is the fashion in which I would like this to be permitted. And we can consider that and come up with something that actually works for people that want them. But I just don't feel like I can craft an ordinance that works for the people that want them without hearing from them. And I have not heard from any still. So, thoughts?
So you need more input for that.
So I think in order to prevent Airbnbs from proliferating in an unregulated fashion, we should prohibit them tonight. But just keep in mind that the ultimate goal here may be at some point to allow them in the future with more input from the public. So Steve prepared kind of a preliminary version tonight, Ordinance 233, amending Ordinance 110. My only question on this is he's defined guest as a person who stays for no more than 15 days and is not charged rent. And my question is, what if my mother comes to stay with me for 6 months? What do we call that? So I personally have a question on this, and I just want to know what other questions we need to have addressed before we're ready to go ahead with this.
What are the policy issues around Airbnbs? I mean, if no one is taking a position on whether they exist or they don't.
I have a number of people saying we do not want them to exist.
Yeah.
I have a number of people saying I live next to one that's being used as an Airbnb and it's unpleasant and people are coming and going. We don't know who they are. And
That's one of the arguments I've heard. The other one is they displace a rental property that could be available for long-term stakeholders, which would be our, residents.
And you've got a house that sits empty a lot of the time and isn't a neighbor and isn't part of the community.
I don't support them at all.
And about how many are reported right now? I think Stan Lauerman reported maybe under
we don't.
5.
It's a guess, less than 5, I think. But because they're not permitted anyway, I don't really have a way of answering that.
Mm-hmm. And they're not being tracked either.
No.
And we don't have the capacity to do the tracking.
Right.
Okay.
When are we concerned about a guest who doesn't provide any consideration spending?
I don't
a
know
long
that
period
we
of
are.
time?
So we really have very little control.
Well, I think we have a better leg to stand on if we prohibit them.
Yeah, I do
And
too.
from there, Stan can at certain times do some research.
I think they're a blight. I think they're a blight on a residential community.
Okay.
I'm fine with your approach of prohibiting them now and kind of seeing if we're even, if anybody even wants them at some point. I just, the guests who are not providing consideration, I just would probably suggest changing that to require there be consideration for them to fall under
But then
the
you have-
prohibition, unless
I don't know
unless
that the
there is some
time-
sort of
Is the time
issue.
is the time period important? Is the 15 days important at all, or should we
It
just
would- it
say a
wouldn't be-
guest means
Well, who's
any
Yeah,
person who
right.
shares a dwelling?
Yeah, no, it's too restrictive.
for consideration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're.
So
Airbnbs
Abby, I don't know if you're taking notes on this. Like, would you be able to
Yes.
remove the reference to 15 days? I'm just not sure that that's an important part of it. Okay.
And remove the reference to prohibiting guests who do not provide consideration, correct?
Removing the idea that a guest can stay
Yeah.
there as long as they want without consideration.
Right.
Yeah.
Not removing it, but keeping that. Right.
Yeah, keeping that idea.
We want to
Yeah.
preserve that. And could you define consideration? That's a really fancy word that I think needs to be put in plain English.
Okay.
Okay. And then with those changes, we can bring this back up in August.
Mhm.
Anything else?
Just a show of hands, who would be ready to vote for it if it were ideal? I would be ready to vote tonight if it was packaged and ready to go.
Just move on. Okay.
Well,
Lisa,
we'll
what
just
did
put
you
it on
say?
the agenda and we'll see then.
Mm.
Again, for first consideration, and when they send it in the legal report, we'll just see.
Do you
Okay,
support- do you support
then you have
I support
all
that
discussion.
prohibition.
And then houses on Olive Court. We've got to figure out what our plan is for 23 and 24 Olive Court.
Oh,
I've been in them twice now.
can't control.
You know, the first time just to look around, and the second time I went with Stan to, you know, have a more educated opinion on what needs to happen for these houses. They're very different houses. 23 is quite nice. It really needs mostly exterior work and a little bit in the kitchen. 24 needs a lot more work overall. And I'll remind you, for those of you that haven't been over there, 24 is the one that the entire backyard is paved. So, you know, how do we want to handle these? We've got, I think Stan's opinion is that we could probably have a house that is in pretty good shape and saleable for roughly $55,000 to $60,000 on 23 Olive Court. It would then sell for probably in the range of 170 to 190. So if you do the math there,
I've been in it with Jim, and the one on the west that is in better condition. It needs at least, I'd say, 100,000. 50 would do nothing but put lipstick on the lump of lumber. I just, you know, there's
that's an opinion.
Jim.
Well, Jim, would you speak a little bit about? I know you've been here all meetings, so
Well, yeah,
I'm
and,
thinking you might be talking about this.
Dottie and I did do a walkthrough, and actually that was the first time I'd been in the Lubenthal house, which is the one on the west, and that's the better house. I didn't come up with a $50,000 remodel. I'm more in the 100 to 150,000 because the siding should probably be replaced. Even you could get by. It depends what you want to do. If you really want to fix it up nice, you're probably going to be 100 to 150,000.
That's right.
The upstairs attic, I don't know if you saw that. It's got that old cardboard
Dead space. Yeah.
particle board on it, which is just a fire hazard. So
Right.
you really need to tear that all off and drywall it and fireproof it. Exterior needs both painting and potentially residing.
Garage as well. I mean, the garage is falling apart.
Well, the garage
Well,
also.
it's not so bad.
So,
It is-
Jim, what's your proposal on this then? I mean, you guys
Well,
wanted to do like new paint and sell it for.
Yeah, that's what, and it depends what
Yeah,
the council wants. I mean, I'm only here to just give my opinion of what I saw and what it would take to fix it up. So, there's a number of scenarios. I mean, you could hire somebody to go in there and fix it up, take those costs and add it and then just sell it. But realistically, I think you're going to look at spending probably more like 100 to 150,000 on that one.
Is that the one with the kitchen where you said the chimney came down and?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one has a really small kitchen, and there is a chimney back in the corner that is not being used. It could come out, and that could be part of the replacing the attic drywall, and you could knock that chimney down right to the basement level, which wouldn't cost too much, and get rid of it. That would give you a little more square footage.
So
the floors are pretty good. I mean, the wood floors.
Floors are nice.
There are no closets, though.
Habitat
I don't know if
for
you noticed that, but
Well, so here's I don't, if the city can avoid having to do the sale on these, I think that would be preferable. And so one option I think we have is to find an interested contractor that wants to take possession of the houses. We could give them a list of fixes that they are required to make, and then they pay us a set amount of money for the houses.
well, there's a number of ways you could do it. I mean, you could.
Do you have a suggestion of?
Well, if we put one of our project managers in, and I guess just to give you a little background, before I was a plumber, I was also a general contractor, and I've done over 400 houses in the Iowa City area. So, and I do have access to project managers and people that could come in and give you the estimates of what, depending on what you want, put a list of what you want, and we'd also suggest things. We'd have to look at that house a little bit closer. I mean, I did see the eaves were in need of painting, and
so how about we get proposals from a variety of local contractors and say, what would you do? What would you put into the house, and what would you pay the city for the house?
You don't have to do any of that because Habitat for Humanity already did that in January. All we have to do is I will personally reach out to Heath and ask him for the file.
Great.
Because he already did that. He took competitive bids of a number of contractors, and that is why, Nick, he asked for an extension until February so that he could formally accept the agreement. And you are right. Habitat for Humanity said that the house on the west needed about $100,000 worth of investment. That made it excellent because they said several things. Fix up the kitchen, make a double garage because most likely than not, people don't want a single garage. They want double. Number 3, reconfigure some of the dead space throughout the house. Yeah. So they were adding space, they were fixing the kitchen, they were adding amenities to the home.
So, I mean, these houses are a resource for us as a city. I think we don't have to do that extensive of a remodel if that's not the way we want to go with this.
Well, hold on. Because one thing you asked the question, what do we want to do? And I've been thinking about that question even well before the Habitat for Humanity deal collapsed. Okay, before it collapsed, I was thinking about this because one thing happened, and that is we all met with the MPOJC to talk about what's coming up next on Olive Court. We're doing all of the what comprehensive plan that may involve potential rezoning on the eastern side of all of that entire street, which means.
Can I just ask, where does that idea come from? I don't like that idea.
That's it's going to be discussed. You met with MPOJC too. I mean,
so is it MPO that's pushing that idea? I just don't understand because I certainly don't think the people of Olive Court are pushing for that idea.
No. I'm just saying that the eastern part of Olive Court is up for reconsideration under the comprehensive plan.
I didn't, but the way when I had a discussion with Kent, we were talking about a commercial area across from Stella's and buying back or taking possession of maybe 2 houses or whatever on each side.
Right.
But the Olive Court houses would not be, they were going to be rehabilitated, but hopefully, but they weren't going to be torn out.
I don't know about the tearing out. That the public has yet to have the survey and talk about what they want to do.
Yeah, I'm skeptical about that idea.
Well, you had the same conversation all of us did. So I don't know what you all conversed. I was just shown a map, and I was told that this is part of it involved commercial area, some of it involved the eastern part of Olive Court. And I said, is this your best planning recommendation? And they said, let's see what the public of University Heights has to say about that. The survey hasn't come out, but that's critical because if we are going to accelerate selling and getting rid of these houses right when a big wave of change is coming on the eastern side, we're giving up a valuable city asset without fully understanding what we're losing potentially. Why? And that's my question. My question is, we should be holding on to some of these assets, because unlike Swisher.
So you would prefer to rent them out for?
Why not? Until we know well, I would prefer to somehow in the budget figure out how we can start making modifications to the western Olive Court house, because that's the one in the best condition. And I'm proposing tonight that because University Heights is still onboarding police officers, we're still hiring, we offer as an executive compensation either of those houses for rent-free to any of our officers that want to live there and live here temporarily.
Do you think anybody would take that up?
I mean, without seeing the square footage, it would vastly just depend on their situation, single versus family, kids. I guess I can't say one way or another right now without seeing the final, at least what it might look like.
Right, because this could be, so if you think about it this way, the way I was thinking about it strategically, long-term, 3 years out, 5 years out, you hold on to the properties and you have now created an executive compensation option for any police officer who wants to live here.
Well, it would make them accessible
Right.
all the time, too, which would be a good thing,
Right.
They wouldn't have to come from Hiawatha.
And we
I think we talked about that with Nate, and you weren't interested in
Well, we
living
Talked
in
about for Nate specifically, but not
Right.
necessarily for the rest of
Yeah.
the force.
I mean,
It's-
and I
it's-
know like Daryl has 2 kids, and I look at those houses and I go, I don't know.
Yeah, from what I remember when Nick
Well,
and I
JJ
talked
has a
about,
baby.
they were fairly small, like
Yeah.
1,900
Yeah.
square feet, something
Right.
like that.
But JJ has a baby, little baby Mia.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how much, and so the point is, you're creating something that we haven't had in the past, which is an option to offer housing as a part of the compensation package to an officer or some officer. And as we are getting more cash from our revenues, we start building out and making improvements.
Now, I'm interested in asking Jim what his opinion is of the house on the east side
Well,
with
the east side is Mike Ritchie.
No, he's gone.
Anyway, that house, that I wouldn't spend a dime on that house. You
Habitat's
either
a-
keep it as
Habitat's
it
the
is
same
for
way.
rental for a while, and then if you want to build another little bungalow there, to pick that one off and throw it away and put a 2,000 or 3,000 or 2,000 square foot bungalow it's got a nice walkout basement. Prices right now are somewhere around between $110, $120 a square foot. You could put a 2,000 square foot house on there for probably $220,000 to $240,000. You've got a lot there that's probably worth $100,000, even as small as it is.
Right.
And then you turn it around and sell it for whatever you want, or you keep it. I mean, that's one that if you wanted to keep it for a year or two as a rental and just
It
let
makes
the
sense.
city have the income until you decide what to do with it. I'd go that route. I would not spend any money remodeling that house. The basement
It's not up to
is probably
code.
about 7 foot or 6'6". I mean, you got a duct to get in there, and
it's horrible.
so that would not meet code for anybody. They are living down there, but it wouldn't meet code that way. The upstairs is pretty much a disaster too. I mean, as far as the layout, I mean, we saw a dishwasher out in the living room.
I don't-
think, and
Yeah.
so
It's like, this is our house now. I mean, first off, these were just poor selections of houses. But
yeah.
What? It's what?
Well, there,
poorly chosen houses.
there's things to do with that. I mean, but I
I-
would not spend any money on the existing house. I mean, you could put a
Right.
nice little bungalow there for the same price as what it would cost to remodel that and put it
Yeah.
in good shape.
How are we as a city going to rent out that house? I mean, I just think that's a big letdown to what the promises were.
Hire a
to
management
people of
company. These
Olive
guys here
Court.
do managing, right?
When
Well-
you purchase the house, from what I understand, when you purchase the house from
Well,
the owner,
Yeah.
the renters have a 2-year lease.
Yeah, we have to keep them in place, I think, till 19 or something like that.
I mean, and you were going to put them
We're
somewhere
gonna put them,
else.
yeah, we'll have to find,
So,
if we boot them out of there, then we have to find a place for them.
Right.
So,
I mean, I think council needs to know that.
Well,
Right, but I
or
mean,
we
it's
could
not
leave
the end of
them
the
there
world.
and-
No, it's not. I
It's
don't
not.
think it is at all.
No.
Who gets
My
the rent?
biggest concern is, don't
just
you
want
agree,
council
Jim,
to be
that it's
aware.
premature to be disposing of these houses right now in 2018 when we don't know what we're going to be rezoning that area for, how it's going to
Well,
look?
if the east side, if there's going to
But
be any
you don't
change.
rezone, like, we don't just rezone an area.
Well,
that's
you
not-
don't know that. I don't know that.
No, that's speculative zoning. You
It
don't do
is.
that. I mean,
No. I'm saying if after the review from the city on comprehensive plan, which hasn't happened yet, comes down to suggestions that we rezone,
even then, you don't do it until you have somebody who owns the property and wants a rezoning. We own the property.
well, just for that house, but it could be part of a larger grouping. And so strategically, I'm saying don't let go of your one chip on the table until you have finished playing the game.
But I don't want that area rezoned.
No. I understand that.
Behoove
we
my
won't-
interest.
I'm just saying we won't know
get
that
the house
until
fixed up.
until the public has spoken, right? I don't know that. I'm just saying what I know from that MPOJC meeting.
Yeah, I think we need to figure out what the comprehensive plan is
Right.
Okay.
before
Before we get rid of these houses.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we are giving away valuable location close to Kinnick Stadium. And it's nothing
turn
like the
down and build a
Swisher
parking
Tract
lot.
that
We'll make a
has
bunch of money.
ravines and sensitive slopes, and it's worth something. I think, who said that property, if it was rebuilt, could be sold again to about maybe $600,000 of a...
Well, I was comparing a house that a friend of mine bought in Melrose. I think it's called Melrose Place. It's a little circle.
Mhm.
They paid $600,000 for the house, tore out the basement, jacked it up, put a new basement under it, and then they're putting a new double car garage. They're going to have $1 million in the house,
Mhm.
and it's just a couple blocks away. So I don't know where the prices are going on these
Housing.
houses. I was looking at not 170 on the Lubenthal house, the west side. I was thinking more like 300,000, maybe even more. It's just depends what the market
Right.
will bear. But
Right.
if you're trying to set it for somebody in a low income or whatever income
Workforce or
whatever income you're trying to hit, you'd have to just lower the price to whatever you want. But I think on the open market it would be closer to 300,000.
Mhm.
So
And that's why it would be a shame to be selling it for what Stan Laverman recommends, 50,000. So, Dubuque,
recommended, but-
Dubuque is working.
So your interest would be to go ahead and try to make as much money as possible off these houses.
Well, with an eye to including our cops. I mean, our cops don't make a whole lot of money. Let's offer something that's well positioned as a house that would want someone like JJ who has a baby. Maybe he wants his child to go to Horn Elementary and then West and wants to live within the city. I mean, who here wouldn't support having a police officer living on their street?
Well,
Yeah, that'd be
Are you
great. I
gonna
just
remodel
don't
the
think.
house?
I mean, we
We'd have
can't.
to.
I don't
Well,
think
sure.
we can
We'd
move
have
them
to.
in there
Lisa.
without making some serious improvements to that house. I do
Right.
not want our cops
Right.
living in that kind of
I
situation.
would not
That
Well,
would
let
not
me
be
tell
fair to
you-
them.
that house
Yeah.
without going through it,
Right.
especially on the fire rating.
So where's the money for the remodeling going to come from?
But I think Virginia, you're right though. Get some contractors in there, get some different bids, get different ideas.
We have lost
and
money
see-
for that. We haven't
what-
used
what
all
they
of our
can come up
lost
with.
money
And we
because
can
Swisher
have
came
our
down
guy
in
do
price.
it too. I mean,
yeah, I think you ought to get your guy to do it too.
we can go through and we can go through and make a list of what
This
we
is
think.
this is what I would like from you.
I am going to get a hold of the Habitat for Humanity file because
Oh,
they
yeah.
were willing to invest.
I think they came
All right.
up. I
I
mean,
mean,
I agree with what they came up.
they
with.
were going to turn around quality improvements
Yeah.
on both houses. They were going to lift the foundation
On
on
that?
the east side of the Ritchie house.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
and they
I think
anticipated
this
like
is enough for tonight.
$150,000 of an investment.
That
So
house
these
is
were
now-
not going to
I
be
re-looked at
dumps
that
of
list, and some
of
were
houses.
Not definites. They
Okay,
were.
well,
So and they were also
Okay.
going to add solar.
So I'm going to move on
okay.
to my next item.
Yeah.
Rental permits were due July 1st.
Thank
The
you,
vast
Jim.
majority of them have come in. I think there are 8 outstanding. We sent letters
Thanks,
to all
Jim.
the ones that were single-family homes because they need to get those in by August 1st. There's a
Right.
couple that are apartments that are outstanding too, correct, Chris? And those are not as big of a concern because they are not under the cap. It's been difficult. Like I've said before, we were asking people for a lot more information than we've asked for them for in the past, and it was difficult for some property owners to get all that information.
Virginia, I'd like to see a comparison because I've received complaints that we're making it so difficult for them that we're even requiring 11 by 14 old legal size paper. And
Well, if you lost the version that came in the mail to you, you would have to print it off yourself.
and that
yeah,
is
they're on legal
11 by
size.
14.
They're on legal size paper.
I mean, it's pretty old.
It's legal size, not 11 by 14.
No, but I'm making the point that's archaic. It's dinosaur.
Yeah,
It's
you don't
dinosaur
use that
requirement.
anymore.
It's not used
Nobody.
anymore by
Sure.
2018 lawyers don't use that. The point is, so my concern is, how much different is this process than the
We're
process
requiring a lot more information and go through the
No. Let me finish. I want to have a comparison of what we require against Iowa City, which I understand is what we were modeling.
Okay.
So if you can get a comparison table, that would be great. That's
Sure.
it.
May I speak?
Yes, ma'am.
So I was given 3 weeks for redesigning, review, printing, and mailing. That was insufficient time, especially given 10 to 12 months of discussion by council. I respectfully requested an extension. Unfortunately, I missed a meeting where it was decided June 1st was the date these had to be mailed out. There has been angst. There have been multiple phone calls, emails, calls to the jack. I respectfully submit that the next time we do some type of process improvement on this scale, we take into consideration that rolling it out quickly produces a quick, dirty, if you want to call it, form. We needed more time. I needed more time. And I'm going to continue speaking even though it's 9 o'clock or 9:41. I spent 65 hours in May getting these forms done, in addition to all the other meetings. So as I have told several council members, you can complain about the size of the paper, you can complain about the number of complaints, but this was a council decision. I was not given sufficient time.
No, they weren't complaining about your work. They're complaining. For example, I had somebody who said, "What's the privacy around me submitting all this information?"
The forms were derived from the ordinance that was voted upon by the council.
I understand that. It has nothing to do with the clerk. I'm just
not
letting you
saying
know.
that. I'm saying that the council, and I asked specifically for, in fact, I asked it of you, Sylvia, for the council to consider administrative policies, and none were determined. So I'm respectfully asking the next time we have a process improvement on this scale, we take more time to consider how we're going to roll it out, the best way to roll it out, and we can reduce a lot of the angst that not only I've gone through, Stan, and Virginia. Nate has had to take a lot of calls. The Jack has had to take calls because people are upset. This was not rolled out properly due to the lack of time.
Well, and I realize, that is indeed true. And my tenant, who is a young attorney, was appalled at the intrusive nature of some of those questions and the fact that they are also now signing that form. If, as a landlord, you sat down with your tenants, with a Iowa State Bar Association lease or the lease of the realtors, and went through it item by item, those points would all be covered. And we could do something as simple as the prior rental permit. It was true intrusive. Date of birth, what in the hell difference does that make?
Yeah.
He was appalled.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff comes from the rooming house thing of having.
I don't think Iowa City has
say
anything
on there
quite
that
like
we're
that.
not students, or four
I'd
of us are
like
not-
to see
all
the
four of
Iowa
us are
City
not
form
students.
because I just can't believe.
I want to see it too, because I need to feel comfortable that we have done the right thing. And if we haven't, let's amend the ordinance to at least change what we're collecting for the next season.
And to think that we spent so much time munching, as we do with everything, munching, to the point where Chris was short-timed for something as big as this, I find totally unacceptable. We just can't get anything done.
Dottie, part of the reason we were short on time was that you refused to collapse the ordinance readings, and so we had to schedule 2 more meetings to get it done before the moratorium expired.
Well, I'm sorry, but the council is ineffective in getting
Agreed.
things done.
Is there any more discussion of that?
No, but I will look at the Iowa City rental permit form. Thank you for that suggestion. Thanks.
And Chris, what do we need to do to help you you mentioned policies.
Personally, I think the ordinance should be changed, that we send out the mailing later because, again, there is inefficiencies that I'm getting forms back for tenants now, but new tenants are coming in August.
Mm-hmm.
And putting on my senior financial analyst hat, you are now paying for extra forms, extra postage, extra envelopes, my time. Why is 1 month more important than another? Why can't we delay it? If there are going to be changes, I think they need to be done sooner in
So maybe
the year. So I'm happy to give my suggestions. Trust me, I have many, but I think the
I'm just
council
thinking,
needs to
why do we
consider-
start on July 1? I mean, let's just start the whole program in September.
The decision was made, I was not at the meeting, that the mailing had to go out. It's my understanding in the ordinance there is a hard date of July 1st, which meant that the mailing had to go out June 1st. I would look at that as the first change in the ordinance.
Okay, fair. All right.
And any other questions for, yeah.
Mm-hmm. They get audited, yeah.
I couldn't hear anything she said.
Yeah, she'd be working at that. Any other questions for Virginia? Okay, we'll go on to.
So I just wanted to, go over the leaf vacuuming really quick. I sent out the leaf vacuum RFP to Forever Green, Quality Care, Turf Masters, Precision Lawn Care, Happy Valley, Emerald Green, and Iowa City. So if there's any companies you can think of that are not on that list, please send them over to me. Chris suggested we reach out to Coralville. I have not done that yet, but I will.
Is this for the RFP, Virginia, for leaf collecting?
Yep.
Can we post that on the League of Iowa City? They have a website for bids. And then the other thing that I'd like to see, and I hate to say I like to see because I can just as easily send it out, is can we send this to the Builders Association who may know of some contractors or friends of contractors?
And I'm also just trying to find out what other small towns around here are going to be in the same pickle we're in. It looks like so far probably Lone Tree.
I know Hills doesn't do leaf pickupping.
A lot of them do burn piles.
They do burn piles, or they collect bags. So I mean, the other thing we could do is consider paying for bags for our residents.
I'd rather save that as
a lot of work. Yep.
It won't
way
work for
last
Bob,
resort.
right?
Yep.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to community protection. Who wants to start?
I don't have a lot to add. I apologize for the report. I thought I sent it out yesterday, but apparently I did not. So you guys have a hard copy in front of you. I did also send it to Chris so that it can be included in the online packet at some point. But yeah, if anybody has any questions about anything that's in there, I'm happy to answer it. Otherwise, I think at this point it speaks for itself. The one thing that I will say is number 3, reference to speed trailer. Was expecting that to be here the end of last week, when they told me that it was going to ship about 10 days ago. I obviously have not seen it yet, so I'm still waiting. I spoke to the sales representative a couple times today in reference to that, so with any luck, he promised to get back to me by no later than tomorrow with a date that we will for sure have that here, because I expressed our displeasure.
Maybe it went to University Heights, Ohio.
Yeah, I'm sure they'd be happy with it. But yeah, so he's going to get back to me tomorrow, and I will hopefully have it here within the next couple days. So,
okay, thank you.
Nate, I see that we're onboarding 2 other individuals. How did the recruitment process go?
So with Daryl Tucker, it was put out there first through just channels of people that I know, people that have been with the department in the past. Daryl expressed interest when he found out the position was going to be open. He actually contacted me in the fact that he, in a lot of respects, wishes that he had never left University Heights. He was happy at the opportunity to come back. So based on his experience and
Where's he coming from?
Durant Police Department.
Mm-hmm.
He's also on the Muscatine County tactical team there, and just he's been to several different classes that I've attended with him, and just throughout the years he'll bring a lot of experience for that position.
And how about the other position?
Trenton Greer is currently in the background stage. We're doing his investigation and some other.
How was he recruited?
He applied to be a reserve probably 6 months ago, and due to the changing within the different positions within the police department, the reserve process, we had some applicants that applied and we never really got anywhere with those because of, again, the turmoil with everything. So he applied for that position, but he expressed at that time when I talked to him that what he really wanted was the full-time position. We started the background at that point, and then things transitioned the way they did, and so we've already started it, but he's currently a manager, I guess, at Shields, one of their departments there. So
but it would be fair to characterize this as internal recruitments then, meaning
he reached out to us. I don't have. Like I said,
And he has a degree in criminology.
Yeah, he went to the University of Iowa. He moved up here from Southwest Iowa.
But does he have any real boots on the ground experience?
He does not. He has family that is in law enforcement in Southwest Iowa, but he does not. So he will go to the
because that's important.
The academy. Yep.
He majored in criminology.
Yeah, he majored in criminology. He got his associates in criminal justice and then majored in criminology at Iowa.
If you get these positions filled, do you think that reserve positions should be looked at also, or?
Yeah, I would probably put that off until the end of this year and do that as a 2019 project, just with Trenton going to the academy and then getting him back, getting him trained and everything, and being at full staff before we try to add any the volunteer positions.
So what is our volunteer status right now? What's our reserve? I'm looking towards an eye towards football because we rely on reserves for that.
Yeah, in the past we have relied more on reserves.
Mm-hmm. And I see that as perfectly acceptable.
Right. We at this point we have one reserve who's state certified. They have to get. It's a 6-month process for them to have weekends. The state provides them a year and a half to complete that training. So we push for them to do it in the 6 months straight, but they have 18 months per state code.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, we have one who is state certified. He started back when I started as a reserve in 2010. So he's the only one that's still currently with us at this point.
So how does the recruitment for a reserve work?
The reserve we've posted in the past on Indeed and some other sites. We will this next time probably also utilize Facebook and just try to get the word out there. It's a unique position in the fact that you provide most of the money for the equipment and we provide the uniforms, but beyond that, it's largely up to them. So it's for a volunteer position, it's an easily $800 to $1,000 investment by them to do so. So,
can you just shoot me an email of what that $800 looks like in terms of what investments? I mean,
I can just briefly touch on it. The fact it's all
Okay.
They buy all their own gear. I mean, we provide the physical uniform, but they have to buy their own. The city doesn't provide a weapon for them. They have to buy their own handgun within the parameters. We provide the taser and their uniform. And
is there any way to not have to require a reserve to carry a gun?
I can tell you, I had a conversation with a gentleman who I won't mention the agency, but was interested in another reserve position in the area. We'll leave it at that. And he started the process and actually quit because they told him he'd be required to wear the full uniform but not carry a gun. And in today's society, he did not feel comfortable doing that because of the target that can be placed on law enforcement just for the uniform and have no way to defend himself in that lethal situation, because they get out of the vehicle on traffic stops.
Are guns interchangeable between one reserve to the next?
yes, as far as going, the guns that are issued to the 2 full-time officers that we're going to hire are department property that have been issued to officers in the past, if that's what you're asking. As far as can they trade them out between shifts, they have to qualify on the gun that they're going to carry. So I would go with no, because they're going to have, if they both show up, there's going to have to be one for each of them anyway. So they're not interchangeable in that aspect.
Right, but this is for the reserve. This isn't for your officers. So if in one year, in prior years, we've had up to 5 reserves.
Right.
Okay, and I don't understand, since Officer Stanley became chief, how we went down to like 2. And I know that the standards of certification, yada, yada, were the reason that was explained to me back then. My point is, we used to have a fine system that was working because we rely heavily on reserves for football game day policing. So something happened, and it's still unclear to me 3 years later.
Without getting into a lot of the weeds of it, I will tell you that it was not utilized in the same manner is the best way to put it.
Well, what's the difference? We just need, reserve bodies.
The chief at that time
we need more, not less.
Desired to hire people. He would promote them to part-time rather than having them as reserve, with the opportunity then to pay them, which puts other limitations. Officer Kite's a great example. He initially applied to be reserve, was hired part-time. We had to ask for a special exemption for him to even go to the academy, because from the time that you're hired part-time or full-time, you only have a year to go to the academy. He worked full-time somewhere else. So
Could this conversation go on, at another time too?
Nope, that's fine.
So we can keep going. Thank you.
I will send my comments to Nick, so maybe you can do something on that.
So next on the agenda and on my report are the second, third, first consideration for various ordinances. I'm happy to kind of race through these unless people want to discuss each one. Do you have a preference?
I motion adoption of ordinance 228.
Okay, there's a motion by Sylvia for second consideration of 228. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Dottie. Is there discussion?
No.
Roll call vote.
Maher.
Aye.
Casada.
Aye.
Herbold.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Moore. Aye. Carried.
And there's third consideration of ordinance number 229.
Motion adoption.
Motion by Sylvia,
Second.
second by Virginia. Discussion.
I saw one of our cops pulled over a big rig. Can you tell us a little bit about that this past week? What's the response? My question is, what is the response that we're getting?
it's not an ordinance at this time. Why, I couldn't tell you why the traffic stop. I'm not aware of every traffic stop they make.
Oh.
It was
They
not.
had a huge load. I can't remember what exactly it was, but I thought maybe they're already.
No, if it was for another violation if they stopped it, because we're not. We still enforce these under state code, but we're obviously not enforcing the ordinance now.
All right.
Okay, roll call vote.
Casada.
Aye.
Herbold.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Moore. Aye. Maher.
Aye.
Carried.
Next is first consideration of ordinance number 230, amending traffic ordinance number 120 to impose an administrative fee for certain towed vehicles before they are released, to authorize towing vehicles that have accumulated $50 or more in parking fines. This is first consideration because we had adjusted the deadline from.
Should we collapse this one?
I thought we had talked about doing that on.
Yeah, yes.
I wanna make a
this
motion to
primarily is
collapse.
related to football games. We're trying to get the tailgating letter out, so
I'll
maybe
second
this would be a
that.
good time to do that.
Wait a minute. First was Virginia.
Well, I have a question about that then. Of the signs that we're going to be putting up that say, no parking here, tow zone. So we're not ticketing or anything under that sign. We're just towing. And the fees will be for them to bail the car out. And then will they also have an administrative fee where they check out with you or?
So yeah, the administrative fee as well as, and there will be a citation issued before the vehicle's towed if it's parked in violation of any city parking ordinance. The change was just to the parking on the yard, I think, is the only change in.
Okay, so, but I want to be sure that we don't have to ticket when we tow. I mean, that says no towing, then don't you just call for a tow car?
We do, and the vehicle's also issued the citation in violation of the or the parking ticket in violation of the
then
ordinance,
do
so
you
it's both.
expect him to pay when there's also an administrative fee.
Correct. The vehicle would be
So
towed.
he has to pay both to you before you release, just the way it used to be.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And so, was council interested in collapsing this, or
Yes.
doing the
Yeah.
first reading? So we
I move to
collapsed
collapse
first, right,
the-
Abby?
Correct.
So you have to, I
Somebody has
don't
to
know if you
read.
have the motion for collapsing, but motion that you want to collapse.
Yeah, motion to collapse. Second by Lisa.
Second by Lisa. Bleh. Okay, I gotta wake up. So we're gonna vote on the collapsing. Roll call vote.
Herbold,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Moore, Maher, excuse me.
Me? Aye.
Yeah, you too.
What's her name?
Aye.
I'm sorry.
And, okay, then we'll have first, second, and third consideration of ordinance number 230. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Virginia,
Second.
second by Lisa, sorry. Roll call vote.
Miller,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Maher,
Aye.
Casada,
Aye.
Herbold,
Aye.
carried.
Okay, and then Nick's got third consideration next.
Well, and I was wondering, so we, for ordinance number 228,
Mm-hmm.
did we want to collapse the second and third vote? Is that what we should have done?
No,
I-
because it's already the second reading.
Where's the 228? Where is it?
Well,
way at the
it's the
top.
very
Still game
first.
day stuff that we're
Yeah, I mean, it's the same rationale.
It's not going to change, right? Who?
Yeah, I'm a little hesitant to
can't-
send out that letter until
And we can't collapse
I
it
know,
after
I
we've
was
taken the vote,
concerned
right? We
about
can't go
that,
back
too.
and-
Yeah, you're probably right.
Oh, shoot.
What are we talking about? Because
It's the very first one, second consideration.
I don't have that on my printout.
It's on under police chief report, and it's the very
we're going back to
first one.
228.
So, well,
It's on the first
we could
page.
maybe reflect in the letter that is
Oh, yours
anticipated to
came
be
out.
passed.
I think you can.
I think it's.
I can't see what's going to change on that.
It's inconsequential. This is already
So we
going.
can go back
If
and
you three want
collapse?
to, are going to, who here is going to change anything? I'm not.
Mm-mm.
I'm not.
So
The
Yeah.
train already left.
I think we can probably move on to third consideration of ordinance 231.
Okay, we can. Very good. Prohibiting obstruction of city rights of way,
We already voted.
including sidewalks.
I motion adoption of two.
Okay, motion by Lisa,
Second.
second by Dottie. Discussion, roll call vote.
Moore,
Aye.
Maher,
Aye.
Casada,
Aye.
Herbold,
Aye.
Miller,
No.
no, carried.
Okay, then, third consideration of ordinance 232. Did you want to comment on
I'll
that?
move to approve.
Can
Okay.
somebody remind me what the
Second.
administrative fee is?
$50.
It's the
$50?
administrative,
Or is it more than that?
It's one.
Yeah, that's,
I thought it was
150?
150.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
one-
that's the one.
150, yeah.
It's motion by Dottie and second by Nick, and you say it's 150. So,
It's currently ran, yes.
any other discussion? Roll call vote.
Maher,
Aye.
Casada,
No.
Herbold,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
carried.
Okay, then.
The next is consideration of resolution number 1837. This
yeah.
this was just modeled after the 2015 resolution. It's to encourage, I don't know if you'd say, people to allow Ragbri riders to come through town.
Does it have the dates?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I motion adoption.
Okay, motion by Sylvia. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Dottie. Any discussion?
Can we please post this resolution prominently on the city website so that residents know what to do if they're going to host folks on Ragbri?
Yeah, that could get to be a big mess. Let's be sure we
Thanks
flag
for-
it.
Thanks for putting this together.
Okay, roll call vote.
Casada,
Aye.
Herbold,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Moore, Maher,
Aye.
carried.
And then lastly for me, the discussion of the tailgating letter, obviously that's been put on hold as we have not finalized all the ordinances. I attached a copy of what I currently have to the email with my report. I don't know what the best process would be. If everyone's okay with it. I know it sounds like now I maybe need to update it a little bit just to maybe clarify that that's the intent for the porta potty situation. But I know that Lisa's provided some good feedback for it. I've run through it. I don't know if, since we've done it, I've kind of set it out there if anybody else wants to jump into it or if we're good to go. But
Thought it looked great.
I'm looking for making sure that we have enough public notice for the people that are going to be impacted
Yeah.
by the removal process, because I bet they need to pass down some fees to their car tailgaters. So I don't want any more delays on details on porta potty.
Yeah.
No.
I think
I don't
Well, let me
wanna
just
waste any
maybe
more
talk
time.
about what I would change then. So it'd be number 9 on the back, portable toilet rules.
So long as it doesn't misrepresent whatever it is that we're voting on,
Are
I'm comfortable.
expected to be finalized at the August
14th.
14, 2018.
But you know what, Nick?
Meeting.
That's just like administratively. Why even do this? Start off with a general rule of porta potties, footnote it somewhere at the bottom and say this will be finalized on this date. And you have already informed the public what they need to do with respect to porta potties, and you footnoted the fact that this is pending final approval. Otherwise, it's just TMI about procedural stuff.
I don't
People
know if
just
you
want to
even
know
need
what to
do
do.
that. I think you should just send it out.
Yeah,
So you don't want the changes?
I don't want
I
the
just said-
date.
I know, you come
This
on up
doesn't make any difference to me.
I know. I knew Paul wanted to comment on porta.
I think we just
I
need
say
to
right
give
now,
direction.
portable toilet rules are updated, and then so you're
Just say
the
give the
suggestion is I
rule.
star it and say
Yeah, just say.
final vote.
Right. And that
Be
way
August
people
14th.
run with their general rule of what to do with the porta potty, and you're comfortable, which I understand what you want to make
Well,
sure that
what does
everything-
Paul have to say? What do you have to say about
What
it?
do you have to say, Paul?
I'd just like to ask a couple of questions if I can get a yes and no answer. My vacant lot that I park cars on will not have any porta potties on it. I furnish them on my commercial property behind the fence. I want to know if that's all right, because I don't want to have to build a structure on that vacant lot for porta potties. They can walk across the street. And most of the people in the parking lot don't use it, it's everybody else. And so I'd like to continue on that way with my 5 or maybe 6 porta potties behind the fence. And I'd still like to put one behind the garage at 116 Gulfview, and I plan to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is
It's in violation of the ordinances. I can't keep up. I mean, I go to all these meetings and I'm not a computer person, and all the strikeouts and add-ons and everything.
I agree.
I just want yes or no if I'm all right, so.
So this would be a legal, maybe a city attorney question, but
Oh.
behind 116, it wouldn't be visible from the front street. And then your business property is handled differently than the residential. This is for than the residential property.
Yeah, that's the residential house. You
Yeah.
can see it you'll be able to see it from Melrose, maybe? Where would you be
Yeah.
able to see it?
Okay, let's go back to one of the fundamental rules on this new change, and that's it's going to be complaint driven, right? So
No, it wouldn't be.
Well,
If
most
it's
things are
business.
not. Enforcement is.
Well,
yeah, enforcement is complaint driven.
Well,
I
I
don't think
know
you're going
Tim
to. Are you going to be
O'Connor-
reporting yourself? No.
Tim
So
O'Connor, next door,
Mhm.
has porta potties in his
Okay.
backyard.
right
Backyards
So-
are
I'd put
Neither
it
one of us has ever complained to the other.
on the other, right?
Yeah.
They're not
So-
visible from Gulfview though, so it's not.
No.
So
No.
it's not going to be an issue under
Mine's
the new
not
ordinance.
No, I'd put it there, and if someone wants to complain, they can.
So
But-
so
Potty cruise.
the general rule is
If you can stop long enough on Melrose Avenue and look across the east parking lot and the north parking lot and the backyard,
gosh.
No.
you'll see it.
Well, that issue was debated, and the outcome, as I understand it, is that we are not enforcing visibility issues if it's not the front street.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's my
Can you
understanding.
can you like write that on the porta potties and say it's complaint driven? So if people want to complain, they can, but
Yeah.
standard is.
Go ahead and do it until someone says no.
I can guarantee you, if I start doing away with porta potties, you'll have a lot of complaints coming to
Yeah.
the council.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, it's a service that needs to be
Yeah.
provided.
Yeah.
More the
It's
merrier.
just basic, so.
So,
Thank you for your time. I'm going home to bed. So.
so just to be clear, I'm sending the letter out as I sent it to council with a star after the first sentence of paragraph 9, and then the star going to the bottom of the page saying final vote on the ordinance will be on August 14th, 2018.
Correct.
Okay. And then, Chris, who do I work with to send the letter
Did
out?
you add that this is complaint driven?
I mean,
Yeah.
can we just deliver it? I don't know.
We have
What do you want to do?
Steve- We usually have Steve mail it.
Why?
Steve's office.
Why?
What rate?
Yeah, why?
I don't know. Are you going to mail it now?
It
Yeah.
doesn't have to go through Steve.
I mean,
doesn't
he
have to
has
go to Steve,
he
yeah.
has staff.
Does it need to be?
He doesn't do it at $250 an hour. He does it at.
Does it need to be
staff.
mailed?
Well, then it goes to the landlords.
Okay.
I mean.
Okay. Yeah.
the
No, this one
landlord
probably
group,
does. That's fine.
Not just the house, but the landlords
Gosh, we need
too.
that. Yeah, this is.
I mean, that's what we did with the last football tailgating letter.
Nick,
Okay.
when are you anticipating that this needs to go out?
I mean, it
ASAP.
sounds like any time, yeah.
It won't be this week because I have a wedding this weekend, so you and I can coordinate next week.
I can help
And
stuff.
I can I can check with your office and see what, is there
Yeah,
a charge that,
Yeah, no, I mean, we definitely have like runners who stuff our envelopes and handle all the
Yeah,
mailing for
but-
Steve.
yeah, it's
doesn't
not Steve
use
doing it.
lawyers
Yeah, it's not
to do
Steve
that.
doing it. Yeah.
No, but if he uses a paralegal, it's expensive.
He doesn't use paralegals to do it.
So we don't know that.
I know that. He's told me.
Okay, well, I'm just
And,
pointing out the obvious. Costs money.
So you're going to check on that, you and Chris.
Do I need further authority to get this sent, whatever we're doing?
No,
Okay.
council.
You have
wants
council
to-
consensus. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah.
And Chris has the
We'll figure it
list
out.
of landlords.
Right, we have a list, yeah.
Yeah.
Excel spreadsheet.
Okay. So you're all finished.
Avery labels.
Very
name
good.
it.
Thank you. So we'll continue with Sylvia.
All right.
We have a few more.
Yep, council plan for parkland and green space. We agreed, actually, no, that's taken care of. All right, the next one is support for the county's new mental access project. Now that we have the new fiscal year, we need to step up to the plate and do our part with mental health. This program is launching, and they need commitments in order to budget, just like we do. So I'd like to motion, if there is a second vote, that we do 50% of what we have allocated under the affordable housing budget line, which is like 10,000 down to 5, and split affordable housing with mental health.
I'll motion. This is so important. I worked on this when I was on Mecca Prelude. I worked on it when I was coordinating with the Johnson County Sheriff's Office. Not only does it deal with alcohol issues, it's drug issues,
It's homeless issues
mental
as well.
health
Right.
issues. Not homeless per se, but the point is that people that have been sent to the wrong facility now will have a home where they can be treated like human beings, and the police are being educated so they know how to recognize these problems that are not criminal activity but are really health issues. So it's a no-brainer. We should certainly step up. I spoke with the Board of Supervisors who's involved with this now, and she said, we welcome you to join us as a neighbor. So I think it's something we really have to do.
May I have clarification on the motion again, Sylvia? 50% of the set-aside,
That we call affordable housing. Mhm.
so it was 50% for mental health and 50% for affordable housing, correct?
I guess that was yeah, I'm not suggesting that we eliminate it altogether. I'm just saying use half of it.
Okay, I just want to make sure I
And
have
that
that.
means 5,000.
I think
Yeah.
so, approximately. I don't have the budget in front of me.
I think you better attach a number to that rather than a percentage, because there's some, isn't the number like 25,000? But then if you don't use it for affordable housing,
No,
then you
it's
have to pay it out to the
25,000
other
and
taxes.
then like 4 different agencies draw away from that 25 and we only
Yeah,
are
I'm
ending
not
up with a
sure
third of
that that's true.
I checked with I gave you all a presentation on this.
Okay.
So
I've
if
talked
you
with
want to
Steve
recirculate the
specifically
numbers.
about this, and
Steve,
he had a different
Steve
answer.
didn't pick up on this. If he had, he would have advised us differently.
Okay.
Or at least he would have mentioned that to the old council.
Yeah, this is old business,
This is
really.
2 cycles ago, if not 3. And the only reason this was caught was because I was doing the budget. And it struck me as the numbers were inaccessible. And that starts the question, why? Why can't I access this for closing the gap?
What do you mean this was 2 cycles ago?
This was the TIF set aside in 2014, 2015, Lisa. So, is there a
No,
second?
you're,
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this is discussion.
Mhm.
And so it's kind of unclear what the amount is, though.
That's why I'm using a percentage. It's
well,
not
the discussion on
25,000.
this with the last council, I mean, I think I've mentioned this before, there was an amount said that we could afford to do, whether over a few number.
We can afford to do whatever we
Well,
choose
over
to
a
do.
number of years, but you're talking about something
Now,
else, not
we're-
money that was available. You're talking about, like Virginia said, a percentage of something else.
I don't know what your I'm sorry, I don't understand your comment.
I recall Jim Lane saying we could afford to do some number, like 25,000, 30,000, maybe paid over.
Well, we can certainly take the 5 that the city was going to use for the park and put it on this. That would be my recommendation. Because it came from Jim Lane for the park purpose.
We don't know. Jim Lane is no longer on council, so.
No, but he set aside, there's that $5,000.
Where did he set it aside? Where? That's the
I
problem.
think it is in the budget that just ended.
Where is the
Yeah.
set aside?
I don't think
I
it's-
don't
think
recall a
it's-
set
I think
aside.
it's a
That's
dollar
why we
amount,
had a
not a
gap in the
percentage.
budget, because we didn't have money
Well,
squarely
let's
set aside.
ask Jim where it is then, because it's there, because we promised it for Rotary.
You know what? The year that Jim promised it in already closed. We're on July the
can't help
10th. This
it.
is a
It was-
brand new year.
I can't
Yeah,
help
It's not
it.
relevant any longer.
It is relevant if it's been promised.
No, it isn't, Dottie. You were promised Rotary by a council. Look what happened tonight to you.
But I'm telling you, that was part of the grant that was.
It's
Oh,
not relevant.
forget it. You can't do anything reasonable with this council.
So the
There's-
motion still stands
There's
and there was a
motion
second.
and second for 50%, but we don't. I
If
mean,
you want to set a limitation, 50% not to exceed 5, that's fine.
We need to do
You're
something.
amending the motion.
Yeah, I'm restating to say 50% not to exceed 5,000.
I'll second it for 5,000.
Okay. So basically, it's saying 5,000.
Basically.
Okay, is there any more discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
I didn't vote. Sorry. I'm an aye.
Okay,
Motion carries.
carries.
5 yeses, I didn't quite.
I don't know, Nick and Lisa.
What was the vote there?
Well, I didn't hear
Doesn't
any
matter.
no's, so.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
At this point, I'm putting 5-0 yes, so.
So it's 5,000 towards
Yep,
the mental
5,000.
health access project. Okay, so then you're gonna talk about
It's the
reinvesting
park.
the CD.
It's the park
That's
money
right.
to me.
Our treasurer needs guidance, actually a vote to reinvest. And I sent council a table of comparisons that we need to do. I think we need to reinvest on a 30-month special of a rate of 2.65 at the UICC for the amount of $50,983.14. This is a CD that matured on Friday. Some of these institutions had new rates on Monday morning, so I could not give you any quotes on Friday, the special meeting that we met.
I
So
remember that, yeah.
Anyhow, this is the freshest, most available information I have, and it could change. We have one institution that changes on Wednesday, so I figured we just need to reinvest our dollars for two reasons. Number one, it's quite a big chunk of money. It's $50,000. The interest rate is at 2.65, which is really good. Right now, we're getting paid on the same amount, 1.5, where we were getting paid. And number two, the city can still continue to look at the upcoming 3 CDs that are maturing to get a different spread of time. So if any of you had any objections to the 30 months, you still have 2 other CDs that are maturing this year that you can all collectively vote to reinvest differently for a different duration. So that way you have a diversified basket of an investment. So I motion that we adopt the recommendation pursuant to the memo that was sent out today, July 10th, with UICC, a 30-month special CD at a rate of 2.65.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Dottie. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, motion carries.
Chris and Lori, do you both have what you need to carry out that investment? Okay. All right, perfect.
Anything else, Sylvia?
Let me see. Is there anything else?
I don't see it unless.
Support. Nope, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll go to e-government. Lisa, you sent out a report.
and that's it.
I did have a question. Can you thank you very much for listing all the different committees, but the Protection Committee is not listed there, and I had a hard time remembering who is on the Internet Committee, who is on the Protection Committee, and Nick, maybe you can tell us who is on this Protection Committee because I can't recall.
What committees? Committees, it's commissions, the zoning commission,
Uh-huh.
board.
Uh-huh. I'd like to see all these committees, because, we're referencing them, all these reports, and I can't remember who's who. And I can't keep it square. And I'm sure the public who is reading the council packets is also having the same issue, trying to figure out who is on this committee. It implies that a group on behalf of the city is actively working on issues for the city. So I think it's okay to identify who is on a committee. So Nick, I don't know who, yeah.
So she's suggesting listing the committee members, correct?
Right. Like committee for the internet, committee for, Nick, who is on this? Who's
that's
on the
what the mayor
safety?
Subcommittees?
Mayor appoints
no.
the chair to
Or
each.
you don't mean like tree board or community events?
No.
You mean,
No, just the
Right, they're
just the
on there.
phrase committee, the
but
phrase
you're
committee.
saying,
Who's okay? Let's start off by saying, Nick, who's on this security committee or community?
We are all chairs of the mayor appoints us as chair
But
of our
you made a
committees.
distinction in your report that said you're the chair and then the committee met. So my question is, well,
Committee met. I'm the chair. You're the chair of the finance committee.
don't worry about me. I'm the
E-government is Lisa. This is stuff that you know.
So you were just. So I know, but I know that Lisa has the Internet Government Committee, and that's comprised of the clerk, the mayor, Lisa, and someone else, right? Right. So the thing is, list the committees. I know we're all chairs. I get that. I just don't know who.
So we have one committee that we need to add to the website. Is that's what I'm understanding? Does anybody else understand something different? I mean,
No.
I'm not sure.
no, the other committees are all listed.
Yeah.
That's kind of a subcommittee.
I-
Well, I mean, like tree
I'm just.
board or
We're going to be
zoning.
potentially starting a new committee. Would that be
I
No,
know.
I mean.
Well,
with the discussion that we'll have.
profiling?
Yeah.
I mean, the committee
Aren't
is
you guys
whoever the
the committee?
chairperson decides the
I was
committee is.
wondering who you were referring to in your report, because you mention yourself specifically in some areas directly in your personal voice.
We did not have a chance to meet.
And I'm like, who is this
Yeah.
committee?
No, we didn't. I got it Saturday. I was in northern Minnesota.
No,
so-
that's fine. Everybody
yeah.
else got it the same day. There's no special
Does
privilege given
the
to
council
anyone.
agree that-
Usually that would be the
I move
courtesy
to-
is that you
Do you
provide
wanna-
a finance.
Move to approve and leave.
No, I'm not asking about, I'm not asking about the process.
Okay.
Finance is owned by everybody. I mean, you saw
Well, Lisa, did you want to say
bonding
something about
issues
your
was owned
report?
by everybody.
You go. Okay, she's not gonna.
That's your position.
Okay,
That's
now
fine.
talk
It's a
about
courtesy
the
that I-
August
that
7th
I look at it as a
announcement,
courtesy
the night out.
Oh,
We're gonna do announcements.
I want all your attention. This is important. On August 7th, it's National Night Out in the Tower Court Park from 5 to 7 for all the little urchins and everybody in the community and out of the community. It's Crime Stoppers National Night Out. Ice cream and goodies from the police in the park.
Great. Are there any other announcements? Is there any objection to adjournment? Hearing none, the meeting's adjourned by unanimous consent. Thank you.